with our meeting, I'd just like to ask the gentlemen to remove their hats and everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, well, thank you all for being here on this beautiful, hot summer day. Before we get going, I just want to introduce our participants up front here so you know who's sitting up here. And I'll start at my far right with Miss Lynn Town. She's the clerk of the board. Seated next to me here on the right is Dr. Steve Cook, our superintendent. To my immediate left is Tom Hearn, our vice chair. And then Miss Lisa May, board member. Miss Tamber Pickford, board member. And Megan O'Dowd is an attorney that represents the school district. My name's Casey Morrisroe, and I am the chair of the board. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of the meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board in writing through our clerk. Okay. Board, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And is there a motion to approve the minutes from July 2nd and July 19th?
So moved.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that brings us to what the majority of you are probably here for tonight, which is these young folks and their adult assistants here in the front row with the Summer Strings program. So if you guys want to go ahead and get set up, and let's hear from Summer Strings program.
Good evening. My name's Christina Phillips, and I'm one of the district orchestra teachers. Mrs. Hahn and Mr. Phillips are as well. And our adult volunteer, Jennifer, over there, we all volunteer our time throughout the summer for this program. It is offered every other week during the summer, so students who've just finished their first year and their second year of strings can keep their skills up over the summer. It's very similar to reading. They don't have very long to learn these skills during the school year, and so when they go home over the summer, it's really easy for instruments to get tucked under the bed or forgotten, and this keeps them playing. Every time we have class, they get new music, so this is kind of a new thing. We're not a performance group, but they've been practicing America the Beautiful and are very excited to play that for you tonight.
Don't run off quite yet. Thank you so much for being here. I think Dr. Cook is grabbing a mic and just is going to say something.
Christina, you need to come up. Come on up, Christina. Yeah, come on. All right. All right, for the past several years, Christina has worked with students in our unique fifth grade strings program. She gives these kids their first opportunity to play their own instruments, teaching them technique, how to read music, and instrument care. After the last bell rings in June, Ms. Phillips and her team of volunteers donate their time to help these upcoming 6th and 7th grade string students keep their skills up over the summer. Christina has taught band and orchestra in public schools in Tacoma, Spokane, Coeur d'Alene. She is the principal bassist with the Coeur d'Alene Symphony, has served as principal cellist of the Coeur d'Alene Symphony, and is a regular performer with Opera Coeur d'Alene and the Lake City String Quartet. When do you have time to all this stuff?
I don't have any free time.
She has been one of the conductors for the Coeur d'Alene Youth Orchestra since 2007. The students you just heard play meet every other week over their summer vacation. You can see how that dedication to their instruments has paid off. Tonight, we would like to take the opportunity to honor Mrs. Phillips and her students for their dedication to music and our district programs. Let's give her a great round of applause, please. Now, your turn. You got to have the mic. It doesn't come easy, right? And you're not doing it all by yourself. So who would you introduced them before, but this is an opportunity to recognize the people that are helping us get there too.
So we have here on, it depends on which way you're on our right, this is Debbie Hahn. Debbie teaches at 6 elementaries in the district and also the strings at Woodland. So if you think I'm busy, she has 7 schools. And then next to her is Jim Phillips. He's the band and orchestra teacher at Coeur d'Alene High School and my better half. And then we have Gary and Jennifer DePietro who come every week from Spirit Lake to donate their time, Priest River, sorry, to donate their time faithfully every week, and they have for the last 4 years since the program's been going. And then we have students here from Ramsey, Dalton, Fernan, Winton, and and Nexa. Did I say Nexa twice? We have from 5 schools. So it's been awesome. We have over 60 kids signed up for this program, and it's pretty awesome. It's very fun.
Round of applause for all the volunteers too. All right, so we have a superstar award for Ms. Phillips that we'd love to give her. We expect this to be hung all over the school. So lots and lots of credit to you. So if we could get, who wants to come up and get a picture taken with Ms. Phillips?
Okay, Bruce, we always give you the hardest act to follow, and we didn't fail again today. So next up is Bruce Twitchell with a report from the Coeur d'Alene Education Association.
Yes, thank you
Good
very
evening,
much.
Bruce.
All right. Board Chair Morris Rowe, board members, am I good? Lights on. Yeah, lights on. Okay, so I guess we're good. Dr. Cook, everybody else, people that like me, people that don't like me. And if you don't know me, you probably won't like me at some point, so that's all right. Thank you once again for this opportunity. I apologize I missed last month. I'll be honest, I was just really in summer mode, and I wasn't checking my email, and completely forgot about it, so I apologize. Hopefully you all had fun at the meeting last month. So in July, early July, I was able to attend the National Education Association Representative Assembly, which was myself and about 8,000 of my best union thug friends all getting together in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'll tell you right now, Minneapolis really isn't that exciting of a town, so if you're looking for a vacation spot, I would not recommend it. Also, they're home to a not very good football team, so there's that. Over the time, which was about a week, we got a lot accomplished. Every time I go, it constantly reminds me how the association truly is a bottom-up organization. I use that phrase a lot because that's really what it is. It is the members saying what the organization is going to do. We got through about 200 new business items in the matter of those few days, and it's full-on democracy style, following Robert's Rules of Orders, or at least pretty darn close to it, where everybody can get up and say what they want. And I would like to go through at least a few of those to let you know some of the things that were discussed. The very first one was the NEA will respond thoughtfully, swiftly, and forcefully in support of and in solidarity with immigrant families who are separated, incarcerated, or refuse their legal rights to request asylum due to the heartless, racist, and discriminatory zero-tolerance policies of the Trump administration. We will not waver in our commitment to these families and will take the following actions. And it goes through and lists several of those things. Another one, NEA will communicate through existing means the advancement of the role and responsibilities of certified school counselors within their schools. I guess too, I probably should have done a preface on this. A lot of these things, actually, I believe we are already doing very well here in this district. Of course, this is representatives from schools nationwide and in fact even some worldwide, because there are members from the military schools all over the world that attend this as well. And so there's, every possible situation you can think of that people are trying to get the NEA to fight for the betterment of the students and working conditions. Let's see, what was the one on this one? Let me jump ahead. The NEA will build on the great teachers union victories in West Virginia, Oklahoma, and struggles breaking out in Arizona and other states to support a national campaign of labor action, including strike action where applicable, to 1, save public services, 2, fight to improve NEA members' living and work conditions, and 3, fight for unions' rights. Another one is, which one was it on here? Sorry. Jump ahead. To ensure that no educator against their will shall be required to carry or be expected to use a firearm as part of their official duty. NEA will create model contract language that will prevent this from happening. This model contract language will be made available to state and local affiliates. And so that's something that, who knows, possibly in the CAPS meetings might be discussing, getting some official language from that. And of course, a lot of times with 200 items, people from all over the world coming up, in fact, maybe just one of them was passed unanimously. One of the ones, just to give you an idea, one that I personally voted against was NEA will advise its state affiliates through existing resources to inform and educate their local school districts to recognize world religious holidays so our students are not only excused from school, but are also eligible for attendance awards. In addition, staff that need to fulfill religious obligations are allowed to take the day off without loss of personal time, sick time, and pay. Myself, I just felt that schools need to focus on school and not what's happening outside of the school. But when it comes to religious things, it's kind of becomes plain favorites, I would feel. And then another one, which, who knows, maybe could benefit our state at some point. The RA directs NEA to establish a voluntary $3 or more membership donation to establish a fund to support statewide work actions and or strikes, such as in West Virginia, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Arizona, and North Carolina. And then probably the most controversial one was part of the NEA belief statements. And it is titled White Supremacy Culture. The National Education Association believes that in order to achieve racial and social justice, educators must acknowledge the existence of white supremacy culture as a primary root cause of institutional racism, structural racism, and white privilege. Additionally, the association believes that the norms, standards, and organizational structures manifested in white supremacy culture perpetually exploit and oppress people of color and serve as detriments to racial justice. It goes on a little bit, but there certainly was a lot of discussion about that. Ultimately, it just comes down to recognizing that these things are out there. It's not necessarily any of our faults right now that it's happening, but it is there, and we want to work to change that. So students, employees, everybody of all colors have the same opportunities going forward. If any of you really want to get to sleep at some point and want to read through all 200 of the proposed things, you can go to ra.nea.org, as I'm sure you all are writing that down right now. This time of year is always exciting. Parents are, I think, really starting to realize how much they love school and how much they love the teachers, because it's getting to be their turn to do their turn to do the tag team, and it'll be our turn to take over as a district. It's, as we all know, it's absolutely a big job, but a lot of us are looking forward to it. I know myself, I'm almost getting to the point where I'm ready to get back. Another week or two, and I just feel like I'm ready for that structure and get back to doing things again. Last few quick things. Number one, I brought this up before, but I'll bring it up again. I just keep reading more and more about the benefits of high school starting later in the morning, 9 o'clock, 8:30, just an hour later, even 9 o'clock. The benefits include higher attendance, higher test scores, less discipline issues. The benefits go on. And I know that this might be propose a busing nightmare, but I think it could be done. And if we truly are here for the benefit of the students, to get them the best, I really believe it's something we need to look at. Hopefully this year, I would love to be part of a committee that's looking at that, and I'm going to keep being a jerk and pushing it until we do officially talk about it. Lastly, I'd just like to ask everybody if you might be willing to, on Wednesdays, wear red for ed. Red for ed on WED. Just to bring awareness to the issues that the state does not properly fund our schools. We need more help from the state, and they're not doing it. They like to say, well, education's the biggest part of our budget. Yes, it is, but it's still not enough. The state needs to do more. We need to be visual about that, and the best way that it started across these states that have successfully made changes is they have started with the Wear Ed for Red. So I thank you very much for your time, and unless there's any questions. No? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Twitchell. Okay, board comments. We had nothing submitted today from the board. So we are ready for public comment. I'd like to remind the public, while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during the public comment period are limited to one comment not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you would like to present to the board, you may provide those comments in writing through the clerk of the board, Ms. Lynn Town. Ms. Town will ensure the board members receive this additional commentary. Please keep in mind that board members will not respond to public comment. If I've determined that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. Okay, and we have 2 folks signed up so far tonight, and first is Kimmer and Amy Callahan. Good evening, thank you for being here. So if you haven't been with us before, just step up to the podium over there. We just want to make sure the red light's on at the mic there. If it's not, just push the little red button.
Thank you. First, we'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be here. My name is Kimmer Callahan. This is my wife, Amy, and we have 2 of our 4 children with us tonight as well. When we initially planned on attending, we were initially going to talk about the district's response to the incident at Lake City High School, vandalism incident, but we have since had interaction with both some of the board trustees as well as Superintendent Cook, and are satisfied that they have both acknowledged that initial failure as well as appropriate steps being taken. So we first would like to thank you for that. However, we think this is also an opportunity where we can take a step back and look at a broader discussion of diversity within our community. We do have a diverse community, And I believe that the school population is probably the most diverse segment of our population. And I think it's very important that the school district is being proactive in its not only policies and procedures, but its interactions with the student body to make sure that those diverse populations are being recognized and properly taken care of. And I think there's two key elements that we can take away from this recent incident. One is to simply recognize that we all come to the table with internal filters that are developed over time from our experiences. Not everybody has those same filters based upon their life experiences, but those filters affect and control and influence the decision-making process. So I think it's very important that as the administration and teachers and the district staff are making decisions and interacting, that they are being intentional about not letting those internal filters control, but taking that step back of looking at how are those diverse members of our society going to view those situations as well. And along those lines, I think the second step is to be proactive in training and procedures and mechanisms to make sure that those processes are being daily exercised, because it takes conscious effort to see past those internal filters. As a father of minority children, I know every day I have to work at that. My internal filters cause me to think one thing, and I have to constantly step back and think, how am I going to respond? Am I responding appropriately based upon their point of view and their life experiences?
And I think the biggest thing that we would like to see happen is intentionality. Nothing is changed by chance, and I believe that we need to be intentional. Like Kimmer said, that proactivity. We need to be intentional in how we address this and how we train others, and also how we take off those lenses and try on other ones and see how it is from other people's perspective.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both for coming down. Okay, next up is Brock Schroeder.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make some comments about, I've been volunteering with the campaign here in town, and we've been knocking on thousands of people's doors, and hearing a lot of concern from families about gun violence in schools. Obviously, Idaho and our community hasn't been directly impacted yet, but I think it would be very unwise for us to believe that that's not something that could easily happen here, knowing the culture that we have here in Idaho. And I have a son that's going to be entering the 5th grade, and every day it's become a little bit more of a concern sending my child to public school. And I've been hearing that a lot from my community, as well as I've been talking to them, knocking on their doors and talking to them. That is a large concern that is going on in our community, and I feel like there's not a lot of communication from the schools on what's being done to make our schools safer, to make our children safer, communicating that with the children themselves. And so I would just like to have some sort of education on that, and some more just broadening discussion about how we're doing that in our schools, and also sharing that information with the children, because they're the ones that are going to the schools. Is when we, as parents, we have to send them there, which is hard enough, but to actually be the children that are going to it. My child just turned 11, and it's a conversation we've had to have, which is terrible. I don't want to have to talk to my son about what he should do if someone has a gun at his school. Those are just conversations we shouldn't be having, but we do. So I think that there should be some education within, whether it's in the schools or probably within the schools, about how we are going to make them safer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Okay, next up on our agenda is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, items A through F? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on these items? Is Brian here? Yeah, there you are. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to shoot you an email with this questioner that I was going to ask you, but you've got a couple vehicles on there, I think, for purchase for maintenance. Are those replacing existing vehicles? And do you know about what age those vehicles are that we're replacing? Sorry.
Yeah, the van is, I think it's a 1985 van, and it's pretty much had. And we're actually bringing on the pickup for snow removal too. And we're going to be replacing a small little Ford pickup with this new 3/4 ton for snow removal.
Okay. Just curious. I know we get a lot of mileage out of those trucks, and I've
Yeah.
seen what we're driving, some of them, so I assume they were old vehicles.
They were.
33-year-old van. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. We are into information items. And, excuse me, you're right, action items. Yeah. And our first action item tonight is the 2018-19 bus routes. Jill Hill is here, I think, to tell us a little bit about that and present. Board members, though, that information can be found on page 79 of our board book. Good evening, Jill. How are you?
Hi, good evening. How are you guys tonight? So what I didn't do a presentation for you this year, but I have gone through every one of the school bus routes and all the rights, all the lefts, all the stop locations. They're all there, and so all the stop locations should be there for you. The major changes, I guess, would be, and it really should be major, is last year the students in Atlas Zone and Hayden Meadows Zone had promised busing for the 5th graders only. And so we did that last year, so I just removed that, so because it was for 1 year only.
That was for the students who were grandfathered in to those schools.
Correct.
Okay.
I just had a general question, and maybe you could define it for me. Safety busing is a term that we're using for students that don't have a safe walking route. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
And that would be defined by a busy intersection or?
It would. You take, for an example, a good example would be over behind Lowe's. Those students go to Winton Elementary, and it's within 1.5 miles of Winton. But because of Highway 95 and Appleway, it's just not safe for them to walk.
Jill, last year, I think it was last year, there was concerns about a couple of the areas where we, as far as bus coverage, I think mostly out toward Wolf Lodge, Beauty Bay. Maybe there was also in Coeur Gulch, I'm not sure, but has that all, those issues all been resolved?
As far as I know, I haven't heard of anything further.
Okay. And isn't the district pay, how does that work in terms of, if the, like for instance, the bus stops at Beauty Bay or something, but if there's kids living beyond there, doesn't it, the district pay some mileage or something from there on?
We do. For example, out in Wolf Lodge, I'll just take the south side. We won't go beyond Mineral Ridge. Excuse me. However, if you live more than 1.5 miles away from the closest bus stop, then the parents are eligible for in lieu. And so they get a set amount every month plus mileage. And we probably have, maybe 12, 15 families total from up in Hayden, Wolf Lodge area, just in our district, about 15 or so that are qualified for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'm just going to follow up on Trustee May's question on the safety busing to make sure my understanding's right. So the state reimburses approved transportation, which is those who live more than 1.5 miles from a school. Doing the safety busing, we're actually, I think, declaring those routes tonight as safety busing routes, and then the state will reimburse us for those routes. Is that
That's
right?
correct. Yes.
I'm not sure This is a question regarding our newest buses and how we're going to determine which routes those buses will be used on, those
Okay.
buses with seatbelts. I
Sure.
don't know if there's lots of inquiries from parents yet about who's going to get the new buses or what the plan will be.
What we kind of determined and where the best fit would be for our new buses is on the outlying areas first. And so we have a couple buses up in Hayden. We have Yellowstone, Wolf Lodge area, and then south of town down towards the Rockford Bay area. It's just those, the roads are higher speeds, a little more windy, so we thought that would be the best fit for them to begin with.
And will those buses also be used for sporting events when students are traveling greater distances, let's say football teams or?
They will, eventually, yes. Yeah. On any of our out-of-town, like long-distance trips, we always try to put the newer buses on those. And we have 6 buses right now with the seatbelts on there, but as we get more buses in, then, the rotation would be better so we can put those out there more for the field trips.
Well, that is an agenda item we'll be talking about in a little bit here, but I think certainly, obviously, the intent was that the seatbelts is the more dangerous accidents or the rollover accidents. So if you're out in rural areas where you're going up and down hills and stuff, it makes sense to use the buses out there. I assume that's what your intention is, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Jill on the bus routes? Okay, thank you, Ms. Hill. So is there a motion to approve the 2018-19 bus routes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, Ms. Town. Dr. Nelson, you are up next with our design technology course pacing guides. I believe we saw these last month for information. They're back for action.
That's true, Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Cook, and members of the board. Last month, we provided for you an updated course pacing guide for Design Technology 8, which is a required course for all of our 8th graders, which is an introduction to not only our career and technical education path, but also exposes them to the pathways that they may go into their high school. We've had that available also for public comment for 30 days, and no comments have been received.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Nelson on this that we saw last month? Okay, this is on page 127. There is a motion there.
I'll make the motion to approve the Design Technology Course Pacing Guide as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the Design Technology Course Pacing Guide. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, Ms. Town.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up tonight is on page 128. Mr. Dukar, I believe you're going to come up and just talk about some school meal program changes. Good evening.
I just wanted to come up and give you information about some of the programs that we've had for a while and some of the changes that have occurred within them. This is on the CEP, and that's the Community Eligibility Provision. And what that allows is to have students Thanks, Mike. What this program does is it allows all the students at a school to eat at no charge, breakfast and lunch. So, and the reimbursements that we get, that's the only meal that we get out of that, are based upon direct certification. What direct certification is that's where we send all of our students down to the state of Idaho, and those are matched through health and welfare. And then also McKinney-Vento and Foster students are also added to that. The remaining students go to paid. The direct certification student percentage is multiplied by 1.6, and that is used for the free reimbursement. I think I'm all right still. Not yet. Okay. An example at Bora at 63% direct cert times 1.6, that's 100%. At Venture, they were 57.23, and that's 91.25. And their rates or their percentages have dropped this year. At Bora, the meals served breakfast were 24,251, and their new rate is 30 cents lower, so that would be a loss of $7,275.30 based upon reimbursement if we serve the same number of meals. For lunch, it was went down 49,000, and that's 23,000, so a total of $31,000 less reimbursement we would get from Bora Elementary. For Venture, their new rate dropped 47%, or to 47 cents, excuse me, and for $3,252.87. And for their lunch meal, it dropped 78%. So that was $10,391. So a total altogether, that's $44,927 less reimbursement that we would get from the program. On the students that we have currently right now at Bora, there's 178 that are direct certified. There are 5 free, 3 reduced, and 156 paid students. That's what we had before we get all the rollover and all the new additions in. At Venture, there was direct cert 64, there were 20 free, 17 reduced, and 58 paid. So the updates what would happen. With that, any student that's on direct certification or free, they shall still continue to eat breakfast at no charge. So no change there. The reduced price students, they would be charged their co-payment. And for them, breakfast is 30 cents and lunch is 40 cents. And then paid students would be charged at the copay for breakfast and lunch like the rest of our schools that we have. Other things that we've done to be able to do that is, I'm always trying to get new programs and everything for our schools. So these schools will still have the fresh fruit and vegetable program, for at Bora. So they will be still having that program there to get a healthy snack every day. Each year, CEP is evaluated, and if we get the percentages in the amount 90 to 100, that's a good number to help, keep the meal cost in play. So it's not that. Our meal cost runs about anywhere. For breakfast, it's 90 to $1.10 is our meal cost, and that's just for the food. And for lunch, it's $1.60 to $1.90. So when we're getting, $1.79 for breakfast and $2.76, that's a little bit lower than the $2.09 or $3.25. So that's where we're doing that.
Mr. Ducar,
Yes.
can I ask you a question? I want to make sure
Absolutely.
that my feeble brain's following along here. So, at Bora and Venture, we had been providing breakfast and lunch at no charge.
Correct.
For all students.
For all students.
And that was based on this community eligibility provision, the kind of the roll-up data that said we had a certain percentage of our population that qualified for free and reduced lunch, and because that was so high, everybody did.
That's why we
Basically.
chose to opt into that program.
Okay. And I think what you're saying now is that those percentages have dropped. We don't have as many students that qualify automatically,
Correct.
and so we need to make changes to the program.
Right.
We can't offer it 100% whether they can pay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's what's happening with that program.
Okay. And then likewise, it was happening a similar tweak just with breakfast only at Bora and Venture. Is that right? or excuse me,
Well,
Winton,
at Bryan,
yeah.
Fernand, Winton, and Lakes,
Thank
that
you.
was happening the same thing, you know, to be able to do that, where their percentages have dropped, you know, most of them close to 20% have dropped on the free and increased 22, 12, 24, and 16% in the paid. So there, you know, there's been a change in the economy and being able to do that. So less students are qualifying in those schools to be able to do that. So with the fresh fruit, or excuse me, with the Provision 2, what we do is that is a program that we can start anytime. You know, we had to update, had to do a new base year based upon the timing, and then also anytime there is a change in population. A good bad example was at Ramsey. So when we added kindergartners back into the school, that changed the population. That caused to redo the new base year, and then the numbers were skewed. So not realistic to keep that program going there.
Can I ask you a quick question before we move, so I just make sure I'm understanding the concept
Sure.
too? So on the old program, there was no responsibility by the parent to enroll their student or child into the program. They just received breakfast and lunch without filling out paperwork.
That is partially correct.
Okay.
Okay, a way that would happen, so if you had a student at Bora, and then you had a student at Canfield and Coeur d'Alene High School, you would need to fill out an application based upon that for your students that were not in a CEP school.
Right. So I guess the only concern I had when I read this was that there would be a different step for parents to go through this year at those facilities where the CEP program was offered last year. And so how do we reach out and update or inform parents that do they have to fill out free and reduced lunch paperwork then to get their students to qualify for these free and reduced lunches or breakfasts?
That's not necessarily, because as you saw when I was showing those numbers, most of them were qualifying for direct certification, but on the paid ones, we have a lot that have filled out an application because a lot of the families have children in various schools.
Right. I guess I would just want to ensure that if we, by switching programs, that we're providing some more information to families this year so we don't miss any opportunities to feed
Yes.
students.
Our
I
goal
guess.
in that is we've already sent out applications to all the families, being able to do that. We also have those at back to school activities, and we're adding that to the website with a new app and being able to do that. And we also communicate with the parents. You know, we'll send and we'll make phone calls specifically to them.
So if I may add, this is actually a little bit of a good problem. It's an indicator that the economy is a little better in the community. Fewer people are needing free lunch, and more are qualifying for some that were on free would be moved now to reduced. So we have a larger number that are in the reduced category, which means that we're not getting funded fully back from the state at the same level. So it's actually a good and bad, because we've made this decision to fully support it. The cost of these in those buildings, we could still continue to do that, but we're going to have to pay the difference. And that's, I think, why Ed's here, is to say we've got choices to make. We're either going to have to pull these schools off of the programs, or off of one of or all of the programs, or we're going to have to come up with some resources to supplement those to a pretty substantial amount if we would choose to resource those. But it's not all bad. I think it is a good indicator of things getting a little better. And I think we talk about this quite a bit, that we'll continue to push for appropriate paperwork and to get all families involved, because it's such an important indicator for the district. And anywhere that we can provide that support and service, we would want to.
Yeah, and I guess my comments stem from just touring Bora and being there while they were filling backpacks or do the locker program, and they're concerned that they had a really high number of students who needed, meals over the weekend. So just ensuring that we're providing meals for those schools is however we can do that.
That is my ultimate goal. The other goal is being fiscal responsible to be able to do that. The funding that we get for our program is based upon the meals, the reimbursable meals that we serve. So that's how we run and operate our program, and that's why we're in the black, to be able to do that. So we also, and with that money, half of the money goes to food. Really, the other half, just about the other half, is labor, and the rest are supplies. And then we do purchase all of our, kitchen equipment, ovens, and those type of things too. So my goal is always to keep the classroom dollars in the classroom.
Trustee May, there was a footnote on here too, just about the reason this came to us kind of for info and action at one meeting was just because they felt they needed the time, nutrition services and communication, just to get the word out. So those folks who maybe need to do some paperwork, know they need to do some paperwork. Those folks who didn't realize that they were getting a free lunch even though they didn't qualify for it because of the school situation. Now those folks are going to have to be loading lunch accounts. So I think that's going to be probably the key in this being smooth transition, is just making sure that families are well aware of the changes that are taking place in those impacted schools.
Any other questions?
One last quick question. Yeah, what percent of students were eating breakfast at Bora? I knew this at one time and I forgot, but it was a high percentage, wasn't it, that were signing up for breakfast every morning?
I don't have that right with me. I should have brought that, but it is a high percentage of the students that are eating.
I'd like to check back in and see if that percentage remains high, because I know those students and families, that was a resource that was always received very positively for learning, and I just would hate to see that drop because our program has changed.
Right. Well, when you look at that, when I say if you take 63% of the students, if that was the case, multiply that times 1.6 to go to the 100, that does not include all of the other students that are free by application and or reduced price. They just use that multiplier to kind of, extend that. So they are one of the higher free and reduced in the district.
I think you run a real good program, and I've been impressed by it. My bottom line really is and I think it's the same with all of us, we just don't want to see hungry kids. And particularly if parents forgot to fill out paperwork or didn't fill it out correctly. And I know you're not going to do that. I just, when I was practicing, I used to work with some people who were real poor, and I remember some of them telling me that the only meal they had was at school. And that always impacted me, that they dreaded the weekends and they dreaded the summer. This is back some years ago, and now we have summer food programs, but these clients would say that they dreaded the weekends and the summer because they were hungry. So I know you run a great program, and I guess I'm kind of echoing what, I'm not exactly sure if I'm completely echoing, but what Lisa May is saying in terms of making sure that, that the word is out to the parents, that they know what changes they need to do, but obviously we're going to continue to feed kids.
Absolutely. The other thing is, with that fresh fruit and veggie grant that we have in 5 of our schools, they're able to get a snack every day. There's been times when some kids would be eating, in the past, top ramen uncooked, to be able to do that, and some of the non-healthy of things. This is also exposing them to some of the fruits and vegetables that they probably would not have seen. And we've even had some comments from parents and different people saying that their kids are engaged when they're going to shopping with them and wanting to pick and choose those type of things. So we don't do all, high-end kind of pricey stuff. We want to make sure that it's a wide variety for the kids. So, and it takes them, probably 7 or 8 times before they know if they like it or not. So to be able to do that.
Okay, if there's no further questions, is there a motion to approve the changes to the school meal program as presented?
I'll move to approve the changes to the school meal program as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, Ms. Town. We're going to do our policies for action here, and then we're going to take a quick break because I think the computer needs a hard restart over there. So why don't we go ahead and start with those. And my footnote here says it's Ms. Town and Ms. Ostrom that perhaps have some information on these. These are found on starting on page 130. And there's a number of them. The first 3 and they have an asterisk. We've kind of changed our agenda now a little bit here just to make it more clear, but our typical procedures with policies is we see them 1 month for information, they're out for 30 days for public comment, and then they come back for action the next month. The exception to that rule is when it's a legal change, and we have no authority. We have, by law, we have to change. We have to agree with the law and the way the language is written. So there's, I guess, no point in debating it because we don't have a choice. So just to make sure we're all on the same page there, Ms. Town's going to asterisk those now, so you can see they have a little star on those first 3 items there with a footnote down below. So those 3 policies we're seeing for the first time tonight, and they're for action. And we had a little confusion last month over that, so that's why we decided to change that. The rest of the policies were all the ones we saw last month, and they've been out for 30 days.
There's one exception, and I can
Okay.
explain what that is.
So go ahead, Ms. Town.
Well, I don't know if anyone has any questions. The first 3 policies, 1110, 1120, and 1200, all have to do with the change at the legislature of the election dates moving from May to November, and when new board members would be sworn in and take their seats. So that's one of those statute changes mandated. So the language is changed to reflect that.
I had a quick question. It's mostly just, I guess it didn't catch my eye last month, but the last paragraph on, I think, 1110, it says if any 2 or more persons have an equal number of votes in a trustee zone, it's determined by a toss of a coin. Is that state statute?
Yes, it is.
It is. Well, there you go. Just wanted to confirm that.
Believe it or not. I've never seen it. I hope I never do. That would be interesting. So that details those. The one, so 3010, so moving away from board policies on elections, 3010. The policy changes that are listed are mandated through an OCR complaint or an OCR directive. That is my understanding, and that's a recent requirement. The procedural changes are some clarification to some district processes that we cleared this up to more clearly define what we do in our own internal processes. So the procedural changes are not what you'd call mandated legal changes. They were just clarifications of district process. The policy changes are indeed mandated. So I would leave it up to the board to decide if you want those procedural changes out for a 30-day comment period. You've not seen these changes before.
Okay.
Have you not had any comments on any of these?
No.
Okay.
None.
Okay. Board, do you have any feedback from Ms. Town on 3010? She's asking if we just want to go ahead and approve that tonight. I think the policy changes from the OCR ruling, we don't have a choice on
Right.
those. Procedural were to align those. We could hold the procedural changes for 30 days for information.
You could
and
put the
then
procedural changes found on page 143. You could put those out for the 30-day review. As I said, I believe it's clarification of the process to define it more clearly.
I'd like us to hold off on that, only because this is potentially a controversial issue. You know what I mean? It's not now, but we've had people complain about some of these issues before, so I'd assume just to cover our base, put those out for 30 days.
So the procedures.
Procedures, yeah.
Okay.
Just to make sure we're cross every T and dotted every I, and we don't have any, but person come back and say you didn't do the appropriate public notice on these procedures in case we have a problem.
I think that makes a lot of sense. We spent a lot of time on these a few years ago when we changed our elementary procedures and open enrollment. So. Okay, so I think I can do this in one motion, which would be is there a motion to approve the policies for action as presented with the exception of 3010P, which would be sent out for information for the next 30 days?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so why don't we take a 5-minute or so break here, just so they can get the technology working, and then we'll get back about 6:02. Figured out, so we are back in session here, and we're on page 2. We're into our information items. Katie, are you coming up for the finance report? Excellent, welcome.
Hey, can I stop? Katie, before you start, can I take just a second? There's 2 people in this room that are going to be here quite a bit that I'd like to take just a minute to introduce. So if you see back there sitting next to Dr. Roscoe, we have Kate Keinert. She is going to be our new title position, Director of Title and Federal Programs. And then fresh off the mint, not even totally baked out yet, starting on August 20th, Jeff Voller will be serving as our Director of Operations, and he's sitting in the crowd. So I'd like to welcome them to our team. When Jeff starts, that will now be officially, we're all hired out at the system level. So keep that in mind. So introduce them both and welcome them both to the team, and we got a lot of work for you guys just waiting. So.
Superintendent Cook, Chair Morrisroe, members of the board, I've got a finance report for everyone tonight. And I've got 3 items to discuss. I'll share the audit timeline. I'll report our final state foundation payment for FY18. And I'll show the residual equity transfers that has been sent to the board previously, but I just wanted to give an opportunity for questions. We started our financial audit final field work today, and we've got auditors in the building looking over our books, and that will go through the 17th when they go back to their offices or back to other school districts, and they continue to prepare our financial statements. In about mid-September, we'll have our preliminary fund balance numbers, so that will be not our final fund balance numbers, but a pretty good picture of what our general fund balance will look like. And then no later than November 1st, we'll have our financial statements, so at that point we'll be able to say these are our final numbers for FY18. And we have our audit a little bit earlier this year. However, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have numbers earlier. Unfortunately, some of the state reports come out later in the month, so it doesn't really speed up the timeline, but we try our best to get numbers because we know that fund balance number is very important. So we'll take a look at our state foundation payment. Just a quick recap of how the year, what we've looked at as far as our state revenues. Back when we did our budget subcommittee meetings, we anticipated we would have a $320,000 deficit. In May, we got some really great news from our May state payment that we would have some unanticipated revenue from support unit growth that we just didn't see that it was going to be part of our budget. So that was really great news, and it reduced that it covered that anticipated deficit and then put us in a situation where we could expect a surplus of roughly $80,000 to $200,000. That's just an estimate there. And so that was reported at the June 4th board meeting. So this is a recap of the latest information we had for our state foundation payment. That is what the state reported in May that kind of caused the conversations of now our deficit is a surplus, so we're in good shape. And if you see that difference at the bottom, we were expecting to get 535,000, if I'm reading that number right, more than what we were expecting to get at that budget summit where we talked about a deficit. So that was really great news. Since then, the numbers they came in a little bit lower, unfortunately, but they're still, it was about $139,000 decrease from what we were being reported in May. But we're still almost 400,000 over where we thought we were going to be back in January. So still good news, not as great news as back in May, but still good. So I'm expecting with this information that we would still have a surplus for FY18. We're going to wait until the audit's complete before I give a range, because state foundation revenue is not the only factor that goes into computing that final fund balance number. We've got many other variables, including our final property tax payments, how those will be accounted for, as well as whether or not an invoice for a large purchase is going to be coded in which year. So we'll wait until we have those final numbers to take a look at what our surplus is, but I still expect it to be a surplus. Any questions on any of that information?
When do you get the final property tax numbers? What month is that usually?
So we collect August 25th, I believe, is where we'll have the last payment that will affect FY18. And then our auditors help us prepare adjustments for how we accrue certain revenues. So I don't like to just put that information in without having it double checked by the auditors. So that'll be an ongoing process as the fall goes through. So with our yes. I think it started at 470,000, so we're in really great shape at this point. So very exciting. Okay, so our residual equity transfers. If you recall, we added to board policy 7215 this statement here that the board will be notified in writing by the superintendent or designee of transfers exceeding $100,000 in any fund, and that the portion in writing was satisfied by being sent, the information being sent a couple weeks ago on the board website. But I'll just go through what was shared there just to make sure that there are no questions. Since it is a new process, I just want to make sure that it's very clear and transparent. So from our Medicaid fund to our general fund, $285,000 will be transferred into general fund, and this is sort of the number that we landed on as far as keeping Medicaid intact as a contingency for special education needs, while still making the general fund whole as far as what is outlaid for contracted services. So that number was reduced from, I can't remember how much it was, but that's where we kind of adjusted back from Medicaid, transferring from Medicaid to general fund. The next transfer is going from general fund to our bus fund. This is $163,000. This is required by the SDE for our bus depreciation. They give us a depreciation schedule with all of our bus fleet on there and tell us each year how much we're required to transfer to our bus fund to keep an ongoing source of revenue for fleet maintenance or fleet for adding buses. Going from the general fund to our bus fund as well, we have $600,000. This is what was promised in the levy to buy new buses for the 2 years of our increase to levy amount. So we've purchased the 6 buses last year, and we'll be buying another 6. School Plus to land acquisition. We've had quite a bit of discussion as far as what the budget was for the Prairie Avenue land purchase. The Prairie Avenue land has been purchased, but the transfer has not been reported to all, so that's the transfer occurring right there. The general fund to our food service. This is an annual required amount. We are required to cover FICA and Medicare expenses for school nutrition employees. That's a federal requirement that the costs are coded to our food service account, but we have to cover it by a transfer. Going from the general fund to 242 classroom technology, there were some tech items that were purchased using an FY18 budget, but the items were not received at June 30. So per our financial procedures that are for all governmental entities, we have to code the expenditure to the fiscal year in which the items were received. So if we left that $216,000 in general fund, that would misstate our general fund balance. It would inflate it, even though the money's going out the door in the next month. So we felt that it was a better way to account for it by moving it to classroom technology, where that fund balance that will be ready there and for the purchase in July. Going from general fund to deferred maintenance, with the discussion of the deficit throughout the year, there were a number of maintenance expenditures that were deferred. Even though they were necessary, we felt that it wouldn't be wise to, even now that we're in a situation where we're expecting a surplus, to continue to defer those. So what we felt is by moving that to our deferred maintenance fund, that would be the best place to keep them out of the general fund, earmarked for maintenance. Any questions?
Okay, can you share what those projects include?
Brian, so a number of them were carpeting, and the car and truck were one of them as well. So that was kind of, we can probably make it one more year without replacing these vehicles. But now that we're in a situation in a surplus, probably now is the time to go ahead and do it. So.
And then on the property, the Prairie property purchase, so did the rest of the money for the purchase come from general fund or from the Thomas Lane?
Thomas Lane sale.
And that was in its own. Was that in general fund?
That was already in Fund 429 land acquisition.
Katie, I just want to say I appreciate the way you've laid this out. That's very clear, and that's, from my thick head, that's what I need sometimes, is real clear things like that. Thank you.
Katie, I have two questions for you up there. On the bus depreciation money that the state requires us to transfer into the bus fund, is that for bus replacement, or it can be for maintenance, or is it?
Yeah, I misspoke. It's just for bus replacement. Maintenance has to come out of the general fund.
Okay. So I think we run a fleet of about 60-something buses. And so I think 160,000 replaces about one bus a year, 1.5 buses a year, right? So, I mean, what the state requires us to set aside certainly doesn't keep us up.
Yeah, I think a bus is
what we
running
need.
us about 90,000 right now.
I think
So
the general ed buses were.
It really doesn't. On the depreciation schedule, it's only 75% of what we would need in the end. And unfortunately, if you don't keep up with the cycle, you end up phasing out of what your depreciation is. So this additional levy amount is really going to help us get in a better spot where we're maintaining and keeping buses that are new and running well.
Right. Okay. The second question I have probably segues to Brian Martin, and I see he's up next, so maybe he can work his way over that way, but was just about deferred maintenance. And do we have kind of a maintenance schedule and okay, here's the projects we think we need to do over the next 5 years or 6 years, 7 years? And is that something that can be shared with us sometime? I'd just like to see that and just get an idea, okay, what do we have ahead of us? What have we been putting off? That sort of thing. Okay. And that's it. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Martin, you have a construction update for us, and the financial information that Katie put together just on that construction stuff that we see every month, I think was on page 157 of our packet there. I assume Brian's not going over the money necessarily, but the projects. Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yep, the projects, when it comes to the money, I can tell you that all of our projects are doing well. We're all in budget and things are going well there. So the first thing I would like to say is that we have Fernand done, got done last week at the parking lot. So we get that finished. Our last 3 big projects are the bond projects. And there's Fernand Loop right there. So it looks pretty good. Hopefully it's going to take probably a couple weeks for everybody to get used to the new traffic flow, but I'm sure we'll be fine with it. There's part of it. There's Dalton School. Dalton School is a project, all gets done at the same time. Right when school, right before school opening up. And so it's going well. It's really tough right now. I mean, we're really struggling with subcontractors mainly. Just, it seems like you see a group of guys at one project, and then on Tuesday they're over at another school, and then on Thursday, you know, so they're moving around trying to get all this stuff done. But it's going together well. Here's where they cut the hole into the gym for our new stage that's going in. They got that done last week, and they're just finishing that up actually today. So that's looking good. Lake City High School classrooms are in really good shape. They're painting, and that's Drive It going up on the outside of the building there on Lake City. The buildings look pretty good. You can see is that all of our ceilings are going in, whiteboards are going up. So it's going along well. Cabinets are in. So we're in really good shape over at Lake City on the classrooms. All the grid there, you can see the guy putting up for our ceilings, and so everything can get hooked up to it. So we're doing good there at Coeur d'Alene High School. That's the same places we got our ceilings going in. And that is our skylight. We've put a couple skylights in a couple classrooms, and so they're in and they work. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Are we going to put a plaque on there courtesy of Lisa
I
May's
think so.
advocacy?
Yeah. So they're in, but all 3 of the projects are doing well. It's going to be close, like it always is. We've adjusted all of our manpower, the district's manpower last week. We started where we're concentrating with our paint crew kids and everybody that we can to concentrate on all of our schools. We'll be probably pulling about 20 to 30 people out of our schools and maintenance and whoever we can get them to concentrate on putting those 3 schools together, because it'll be the last week before school starts that everything's will be hauled back in and final cleaning and all that stuff. But it's going to be tight, but we'll make it. There's Coeur d'Alene High School. If they're putting up our tilt panels right there. That was quite a sight to see. A lot of weight.
Brian, can I ask you a couple questions just on the high schools? Because I've had a few people in the community ask me, and I think I knew the answer, but really all along our primary focus has been on the classrooms to make sure classrooms are ready for the start of school. The athletic facilities, the weight room expansions, those sorts of things, if we're deferring things, it's those as far as completion, right?
Yeah, they're not scheduled.
And I think Coeur d'Alene High, it was always like in October, or end of October completion for the gym. I remember that when we did the bids. But.
Yeah, all those areas, the front entryway for Coeur d'Alene High School and the new gym expansion, that's going to be October before we get that. Same thing with Lake City High School, the weight room, the wrestling room, and the new gym. That's all same thing. It won't be done on the first day of school. It'll be in September, October.
Okay. Coeur d'Alene High entries, you said, is also will be
that won't,
deferred, so they'll be using their alternative.
They'll be using the same entryway when we start school, but I think it's pretty interesting. You got 2 guys down there guiding tons of concrete in place. That is a picture of Lake City High School. And you can see that far to the left, that is the classrooms. And then in the back of the building is our new gym, wrestling room, and weight room. And they're doing well. The block is all the way topped out, and the structural steel is going up on the roof on the gym. And then they're about halfway up on the weight room and the wrestling room right now, as of today. All of the interior work that we did, we got rid of those dividers and stuff, and we had some classroom modifications and stuff. They're just about done with all that, so they're in good shape over there. We'll be ready for school over there.
Aren't those some science classrooms?
Yeah, one is a
Require
science
extra, don't they
class.
require some extra things in there, don't they?
Yeah. You got water and gas and
Yeah.
hoods and stuff like that, so
And
different
Brian,
kinds of counters and stuff.
Weren't you always joking that this is the last remodel of the school, as big as it, fire code wise, it can get, when we're adding on classrooms?
Oh, you can always add on to them. You just fall into more code issues with fire. You have square footages that you have to deal with, and so you get too many square foot, then you have to block it, and so, and it costs a lot of money when you start doing that. No, they can be expanded more, but not for a while. Anyway, they're doing well. The construction's doing well. We actually got behind Canfield paved today, and their playground, the basketball court in the back. So that got done today, and a lot of little things are being done. Just trying to keep, it's kind of like herding cats right now. But we're getting her done, so it looks good.
Did I see on Lake City that they started some parking lot work? Were you
Yeah.
able to get that done and, or not done, but get that into the budget? And I
Yeah.
think you did that through maintenance. Is that what you told me?
Well, we started out where Katie is playing with that a little bit to make sure she wants it. Right now, we're going to have it in the bond, but we do have the money if we had to pull it out. So, and talking about the stuff that Katie was talking about, one of the main issues we have in the district right now is flooring and roofs again. So, I mean, Woodland's up for a new roof. We have a lot of flooring. And then we're putting together something right now with some energy stuff with a Vista. I think we talked about last month. So we're trying to look at that too, see what we can all do. Get some of that good money. Anything else?
Any other questions for Mr. Martin? Doesn't look like it. You can go back to vacation.
Yeah. I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, that's all right. I have to say this because one of the big helpers that have been for us here lately is Megan, our attorney. She has been a blessing, I'm telling you guys, so I just want to publicly thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have had our hands full with things, and she has knocked it out of the park, so thank you.
So what kind of legal trouble you're in?
Not me, not me. So, thank you much.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, next up, item G is property updates, and I think this is coming from you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, this is mine. We've got 3 things to talk about. The first one is the west boundary adjustment. I think that's all but done. We are still waiting for the tax commissioner's office to sign off. We've called and pestered multiple times, and they said it's on its way. It's on its way. We expect that literally any day now. The next thing is, and we're working on this pretty diligently with that, is the communication plan for affected families. And Scott's working on letters that'll be in contacting those families. We've been in pretty direct conversation with them. I don't anticipate any surprises with that. The Hutter property site, I'll move to that. We're in due diligence with them. We're under contract. The environmental is scheduled for next week, I believe. And the appraisal is supposed to be scheduled in 2 weeks, I believe. So we're moving right along. I would expect we'll have that data in well within our time frame and looking to move on something and have a recommendation to you guys within 30 days. Hutter property, the Prairie property, we have submitted our application for annexation. We've submitted our special use permit. We're moving. I think the traffic study is a little more complicated. It's going to be a little, it's not currently as it stands right now. It's going to be kind of a joint traffic study. We'll see how that goes. I've got Megan's here to answer any really detailed questions if you guys would like, but I think we're moving and grooving on all 3 things right now. So hopefully we'll have good information available to you guys. So.
How about the sewer agreement? I know we had kind of that proposed agreement from Vista Meadows, I believe it was called. I don't think we ever executed that agreement, or that hasn't come to the board other than we've seen it proposed. So are we I thought I heard they were gonna start on their sewer work soon, so I assumed they're looking for our participation in that. And I know we had talked, I think the city would like the sewer line upgraded from 8 inches to 10 inches or something, so. No work on that?
Yeah, so I haven't, making sure my mic here works. We didn't have a size for the sewer line when this was originally negotiated with Vista Meadows. That's the development that's being started right to the west of the Prairie property. So in the recent conversations we've had with the architect and Vista Meadows representatives, because of the size of the development that's happening, they are going to require it to be upgraded, is what I've heard. So I think last I heard, I was waiting for some feedback from Vista Meadow folks because you have a developer that probably doesn't want to pay the added cost involved with this, so they were going to try to fight that fight a little bit. And but my understanding too, we drafted a proposed shared cost on the sewer maintenance line, sewer install line, I would say, months ago, and could be finalized at any time once we get the sizes. But I hadn't heard they had started install.
I don't know that they've started, but last I spoke with the Vista Meadows folks, I thought they were gonna start in August, is what they told me, and so we're there now. But who knows, they've delayed a few times, I know.
We have also we are looking to get the property that's on the property off of the property. That's been a little tricky. We might be doing an auction where I think there's possibility that it's going to take a little time to get rid of some of the house and some of the other stuff. If you've driven by there, you've seen it. We've looked at it. I think a possibility of auctioning some of those materials. So.
About the process.
Go ahead.
So we applied for annexation, and then that goes to the city. Then does that go to planning and zoning, or kind of what would be next steps? How much information can we expect to have by September? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So both of those they're allowing us to do 2 applications contemporaneously. So we've submitted application for the annexation as City of Coeur d'Alene, and we've also done a special use permit application. Both of those will be on the agenda for the City of Coeur d'Alene's Planning and Zoning Commission on September 11th. And the special use permit, if it's approved, it would be conditionally approved pending final approval by City Council of the City of Coeur d'Alene. So then it would go to City Council October 16th, assuming that Planning and Zoning recommends approval of the annexation.
And we're notice to take action in September. What day is that meeting? So the week prior.
I think it's the 10th.
I think we deferred, right? A decision for 2 months, is that how we did that, right?
2 month delay.
Right. Yeah,
And I would
we
anticipate.
can always look at deferring again if we need to.
I would think after that September Planning and Zoning meeting, September 11th, by the end of that meeting, we'll have most of the information. I mean, the annexation would be subject to final approval by City Council, but we would know with the special use permit if it was conditionally approved, and if Planning and Zoning would recommend, then that would be quite telling.
In Lakes Highway District, they are the light determinators, so the Planning and Zoning doesn't do any piece of that, or they may give their own recommendation.
What they normally do is, and that's more for the special use permit piece than the annexation piece, because that's where city infrastructure and services is looked at a little bit closer. So that traffic study hopefully will be done by the end of the month, and we can present that as part of the application with the special use permit. I would expect there would be some conditions. So part of that little section of Prairie is Lakes Highway District, and then as we use the interior roads, those are all within the City of Coeur d'Alene. So as Dr. Cook said, it's a joint traffic study to try to satisfy the requirements of both Lakes Highway District and the City of Coeur d'Alene. And I would expect to know if they want to do some mitigation measures, what those would look like. And we've already had some conversations with them about what our expectations would be. So those conversations are moving forward at least.
Last one for me on this. I noticed, I think last week I drove by Prairie and it looked like they were demoing one of the outbuildings. Was that with our knowledge and consent? Okay. I know it wasn't much of a building. But oh.
The fire department likes those old buildings. They have to burn them down. Seriously.
It's got to be emergency levy meeting.
Oh,
Would be an
mercy.
emergency levy meeting if we qualify.
All right.
Okay.
Did you send out an announcement? Okay. Just wondering.
All right. Anything further on that? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cook. AP test results.
Dr. Nelson will be presenting a new and improved format. I'm excited about this.
I'm hopeful. Hopefully you enjoy it. Chair Morris Rose, Superintendent Cook, and members of the board, I have the honor of standing in front of you every once in a while to talk about how our students are performing. And sometimes I get to give some great results, and sometimes I haven't, been on a good streak lately. So I'm really excited to be able to share with you where we are in terms of our advanced placement results that have just come in July. You can hopefully see some of the excitement also as we went around the communities over the last couple of days and delivered 46 yard signs to students who had perfect scores on their AP exams. It was really cool to be able to do that and to celebrate our students' work. So overall, how did we do? Let's take a look at our AP results received. We still do have a few results coming in, but first of all, let's take a look at how many students are enrolled within our AP program and how many students are electing to take the exams. The red bars that you see up on the screen give us the number of AP examinations. So that is, of course, the students who are interested in taking the exam. For years, it was an expectation for us as a district that if a student sat in an AP class, that they had to take the exam. And we ran into a couple of different problems with that, especially monetarily. The exams are about $80 a piece. So you'll notice for many years it was pretty close that we had a pretty nice congruence between the number of students enrolled and the number of students who elected to take the exam. You'll also notice that we saw a big blue spike in 2015. That was really the time that a new suite of opportunities came from the state of Idaho called Advanced Opportunities, which removed that cap and basically allowed students to take the exam and to be able to take the courses that they wish. So since that time, however, with the amount of money that's been out there, you'll notice that the blue bars have been going down since 2015. And it's also because those same monies that allow students to take AP courses and their associated exams also pay for students to be able to take any dual credit courses that they wish. So we struggled in the past couple of years of making sure that the right students are getting the right level of challenge in these courses, and to really beef up the amount of work within our 27 different AP courses that we offer at this point, 25 of which are currently active. So you'll see that we're getting back closer to the philosophy that, hey, if we're going to make so much of an effort to put students into classes based on their abilities and really encourage them to take the highest quality of courses that our district offers, that we really want the exam to be part of that. So now, again, those advanced opportunities monies do pay for it, and I do want to remind you as well, is as our numbers are growing, that means more and more of our teachers are getting trained in AP. It's very important to make sure that they have a professional network within our own system, but outside as well. How has this helped us out? Well, I am pleased to tell you that this is the first time that our students at both Coeur d'Alene and Lake City High Schools have met or exceeded the national and worldwide averages in their courses. These graphs share with you the percentage of students with a 3 or higher. A 3 typically means college credit, but not at all universities. It's really up to the university and the student to be able to find that agreement. But for years, we had worked with our teachers to bring this up, and this last year, we were able to meet that goal. Still would like to see a little bit more of a levity of a growth at Lake City High School, but from over the past couple of years, it's certainly better than where we are at. Chair Morrisroe, you had a kind of an awkward little glance there.
I just had a question on the previous slide.
Let me bring it back for you.
Just around 2015, is that the first year that we didn't have IB also? So we saw a big bump in AP.
That is also true. The AP program was reinstated in the 2010-2011 school year at Coeur d'Alene High School, and then we went into a 4-year decline of that program at Lake City High School. So yes, at that particular point, that was the only advanced placement option that was available.
Dr. Nelson, I had a quick question also.
Sure.
In there, it talks about in-house external trainings are provided to all content teachers annually. Are they mandated to take trainings, or is this an, here's some training where, I'm just curious, I've heard some kind of feedback that they're not getting enough training, and I don't know how we provide it, if we're encouraging it, if we're sending them away. Or
Sure. Sending them away is a very interesting way to put that.
Not unless it's a nice place.
Yes. Well, the first thing that we do is our internal trainings. We have 2 AP summits every year. So at the fall and in the spring, we bring all of our AP teachers together in this very room. And we talk about, not only in the fall, their exam distribution, the ways that their scores have increased, decreased, and they make individual goals based on each month. We also look at the resources that we have available for them and make sure that all of those logistical things that our district can control are there. We also do send our teachers out for external trainings. They're not every single year, but we are very lucky that Spokane actually offers a very robust series of trainings. What our teachers typically tell us is that the same trainers are coming back every year. So unless the course is up for renewal, which they're on their own 6-year cycle, we don't mandate it. But once they do have their updated 6-year cycle, we absolutely send them to those trainings. So we had 8 teachers this last year who went to training of this last one. And it's again focused on those contents that are changing because we want to make sure we're on the top of the wave. Any additional questions on this slide? No problem. So again, we're looking pretty dang good. This was good news to be able to see. Coeur d'Alene High School this last year, 75% of all students who took their AP exams got a 3 or higher on the exams. And again, at Lake City High School, right at that worldwide average, higher than the state average of 61%. So how does that really translate? Well, the whole goal that we have for our students is that they are prepared for what lies after their graduation. We want them to know their pathway, where they would like to go, what they would like to do. So we use our career cruising program and our profiles all the way that takes all of this information together. And how prepared are our students for college? Well, we actually track our students after their graduation. If they enroll in a public college or university or trade program, almost always they're being tracked by a service called National Student Clearinghouse. And National Student Clearinghouse gives us a window into what those students are doing, where they are studying, what their degree programs are, what degrees have they earned. Unfortunately, we don't always get to see what they're doing after their degree, but it gives us a lot of insight as to how our programs are preparing students. You'll notice right now that in the class of 2017, which is the most recent data that we have, 56% of our students enrolled immediately after graduation. These results were received in October of this last year, and they typically will not update until we put in the next year's graduates in. But I can tell you that is pretty typical from what we have seen before. These are students who enroll right after, so if they choose to take a semester off, they would not be included in this data. If they choose to serve a church mission or something similar, of course, they would not be included in this data. But I can expect that those numbers are going to be in the mid-60s when they're recalculated for us at the beginning of this year. In addition, you do notice that we see about a 6 to 8% growth if they enroll in a college, university, or trade program within 2 years. So we do expect that number to grow as well. Our district goal, by the way, is about 70%. So that is part of our college and career readiness plan that we submit to the state.
So that's part of our continuous improvement plan.
Correct. So we still have a little ways to go, but at the same time, again, that's nice. We all recognize that college is not for everyone. But this also does take in your 2-year programs, your trade schools for the most part, and I'll show you some of that information here in just a moment.
Just on a brief note, so because that's part of our continuous improvement plan, what are we doing to improve that number?
Absolutely. So we're working with our college and career advisors specifically, and again, we're focusing on those college and career preparedness plans that our students are doing within career cruising. We again want our students to have a pathway. And we also need to remind our students and ourselves that the high school graduation diploma is still extraordinarily worthwhile. But in many cases, you do need to have some sort of training after high school to become employable. So to make sure that students understand that the end goal is not just to have the diploma. That is the first part of a multi-step goal to become further employed. And I can share with you some of those plans that we've developed if you'd like to see. One of the challenges also in the state of Idaho is this. It's called persistence. And in fact, Idaho was dead last in the nation at the 2012 time that this table was on the screen in the number of students who continued on after their first year, not the kids who dropped out after their first year or semester of college. In 2012, that's when the Don't Fail Idaho started around that time when those numbers were there. As you can see, about 76% of our students are persisting into their second year of college or university. The state average has come up. We've been above the state average each of those years. But still, in our district and nationwide, we are below, statewide, we are below the national average. Here's an interesting slide for you. So, of all of the graduates of Coeur d'Alene School District, where are they now? Well, here they are. Most of the students who have graduated from a Coeur d'Alene public school are enrolled at North Idaho College. Currently, 695 of their population have graduated from one of our 3 high schools. 384 go to the University of Idaho, 138 go to Boise State, 29 from Montana, Whitworth, and on and on. You will notice in the red part of that screen that only 2 of the universities, or 2 universities there are community colleges. And one is a trade school, that's Carrington College out of Spokane, that has a very large pre-nursing and cosmetology program. But for the most part, our students are electing to go to 4-year universities over 2-year and trade schools. What are they studying? Well, 91 of our students currently are in programs that are general studies. But then you can see the rankings from that afterward, and there's a lot more that it could even fit on the screen. But by biology, business administration, elementary education, and psychology top the list. These are Coeur d'Alene graduates, so all 3 of our high schools graduates, and what they're currently studying. So there's a lot of singletons that are down and out there. There's some nuclear engineering and some very cool ones in on the list, but didn't make the top 10. So overall, I'd like to encourage you, and I know it's in your packet this evening, our College and Career Readiness Report that goes into much more detail. I'd like to also encourage anybody in our community to take a look at our district website at cdaschools.org. There under the headings of departments and assessments, you'll be able to see fuller AP results and again, our complete plan that's there. May I answer any additional questions?
I have one for you, but I'm going to back up just the AP results again.
Okay.
If we can. So on the percentage there that's showing of students who scored 3 or higher on their AP exams. So I think it says above there were 573 exams that were given. So 75% at Coeur d'Alene Highs.
573 this
75% of
last
them
year.
were 3 or higher.
That's correct. 75% of those of the 573 are 3 or higher. Now again, that is not just Coeur d'Alene High School's 573. I'd have to look at the end specifically of Coeur d'Alene High School to give you the exact number. Okay. And I did present.
I wasn't sure if we were talking total test or total kids, meaning if one student happened to be in 4 AP classes, let's say.
Right.
But he only passed 1 class.
Yeah. The number
or
that
one
you're seeing
test
there is
at 3 or
total
higher, so-
exams.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just like to make one comment on this. I'd just like to remind us. There are 3 measures to compare students nationally: the NAEP, the PISA, which actually goes internationally, and AP results. And so I think it's very important that we continue the dialogue around advanced placement coursework and assessments as a picture in time. And if this is something that we would want to set goals around, to talk about what we want our highest performing students to have access to, I think it's valuable for us to talk about college and career ready separately in this particular group, so that those students that maybe aspire, and this is not it's not one or the other, but typically AP students, if they do well, are aspiring to go somewhere beyond the local schools. And so I think it's important for us to have a dialogue, and when we have when we talk about college and career readiness, that we have options for kids that meet their needs or their parents' needs. And AP is an excellent resource to look at how am I competing as a student at a national or potentially international level.
I guess my question is kind of along that lines. Is, you know, as we listen to the community, one thing that I'm hearing is that the number of our students enrolling in AP math and science courses is dropping. I don't see that reflected in this report necessarily, but do you find that to be true, or?
I would be glad to research that and get it back to you. I haven't looked at the content level as much, but I will be glad to. One of the challenges that I know does happen, especially in science, is that at both of our high schools, they rotate between chemistry and physics. Biology sometimes is based on enrollment. So that certainly could come into play as to who is electing to take those courses.
And I guess that, you know, piggybacking on that, I'm hearing that there's not equity amongst Lake City and Coeur d'Alene in the number of AP courses that are being offered. I hear that it's because of the block schedule. You know, maybe as we're thinking about workshops down the road, that's something that we could, you know, talk about. And are we offering, you know, parity between the two schools? And if we're not, how can we strive to do that? And maybe it comes back to recruiting or reaching out to parents that AP is a great opportunity for advanced placement, and are we promoting that like we could be or should be? I don't have the answer. That's what I'm hearing from parents.
I completely agree.
Well, when deciding, you guys based that off of numbers of kids interested each year, correct? So
Correct.
that can
Pre-enrollment
also
is really the driver in that you have to look at the number of teachers you have available and the number of facilities you have available at that point. And the bell schedule absolutely is a consideration. The block schedule does give more elective offerings. However, let me pull the exact numbers and then we can have a fuller conversation.
The sign thing was really cool that you did. Was amazing to watch.
Cool.
I saw it since I just got back from vacation, but we returned to a sign and it was pretty cool. I thought we had to return it, but awesome that we get to keep it.
Nope.
My next one entering Lake City said, "Hey, could you stick that out for me, even if I don't pass?" And I was like, "No, you got to earn yours." So
Good.
that
And
was
if I
pretty.
may,
Yeah. Can we just keep using it? So that was really cool. It was cool to see the principals, and
Yeah.
I got feedback of, principals going and knocking on the door and being able to the kids and families. So it was awesome that they knew it was coming.
Well, I want to thank our entire team, and if I may, that is an example of what we've talked about at those AP summits. One of the challenges is the AP courses are draining, both to our teachers and our students. There's a lot of emotion that goes into that, and we have to find ways to bring the culture back together, as Dr. Cook was talking about, that these are our ultimate level of rigorous course, and we need to celebrate when kids do extraordinarily well on them. So I'm glad that it was effective for you, and I'm hopeful that we can continue doing it.
Yeah, it was fun to watch on the Facebook page too.
Great.
I thought that was pretty awesome. Whoever followed along and took pictures, and was that Victoria?
Scott and Victoria were part of the team,
So
absolutely.
awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Actually, one last thought.
Sure.
When you're looking, back at our math and science offerings, is it possible that we could do a comparison of a district our size, like Montana, Washington, what their AP course offerings look like compared to what we're currently offering?
I can certainly do that. They're not public record, so I would have to build within my network and try to find that out. Boise and West Ada are number 1 and 2 in terms of the number of AP courses that they offer and the number of exams in the state. So I'd probably start there.
That's fine.
Outside, I could work with maybe some Spokane schools and see, but they're not obligated in any way to make them public. So I will work and see what I can come up for you.
And I'd just add, since we're here, AP exams are an opportunity for students that cost money, not just in the cost of the test, but the resource that needs to be provided to get a teacher trained, fully trained and prepared to prepare kids to be successful on this. This is one of those value statements that I think we can talk about when we start setting our strategic plan and direction, whether or not that we want to spend resources in this fashion. The first thing you'll hear from teachers would be things like, I'd love to do this, but it's going to take me blank amount of years or blank amount of time to get up to speed or to get trained, and it is an investment in the future of both the teacher and the students that they would be seeing, and the future of the district. So I think I'd like to see us have a dialogue about where that fits in a grand scheme of things with regards to district goals and kind of strategic plan going forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Okay.
Sorry,
Gotta-
real quick.
oh.
With the dual enrollment too, good part of the conversation with how that also affects students too, taking the AP courses, because I feel like I've seen a lot more kids lately, the last couple of years, going the dual enrollment route.
I think one thing that it sounds to me like one of the things that we might want to consider to do sometime in the near future is talk about pathways and what the intentions of pathways, how they overlap. You know, they're kind of a Venn diagram. It's not discrete pathways that don't, if a child chooses at an early age they want to go do something, that it could be both dual credit, it could be AP, it could even be career technical education. All three of those things could happen, or all three could exist separately. I think one of the things I'm hearing is an interest in looking into that kind of, what does that look like? For a pre-K student, if they as a 4-year-old knew exactly what they wanted to do, what would their pathway look like for the next 13 years, right? And how we could provide that guidance to them. So I think we can start working on that and have something ready for you guys.
Is that the parent that knows what they want their child to be at 4, or the child knows that? Okay. Seth, I think you're up. Our next item here, if there was nothing further there for Dr. Nelson, just our annual technology update, and looks like a change in the internet safety plan.
Things here. Superintendent Cook, Board Chair Morrisroe, members of the board, thank you for allowing me this privilege of talking to you tonight. Just giving an annual technology update and a couple of pieces of updated data. First of all, just when we talk about technology in our district, we're really talking about 3 departments now, and this is a more recent change. So our technology department now includes security, which we're going to try to have on the agenda on more of an ongoing basis. I'm not going to talk as much about security tonight. Informational technology, so IT, what you traditionally think of, that's where the bulk of our staff in the technology department are. You can see that we have, a systems analyst, network supervisors. That's where our building technicians are. That's who interact with the teachers on a day-to-day basis, servicing everything from projectors to desktops and dock cameras, all that. And then we also have instructional technology, and this is what the teachers and students are actually doing with the technology in the classroom. And so we have a technology coach and then a halftime person that assists with professional development and doing lessons and things in the classroom. So in terms of some of the numbers of technology, some of this should hopefully look familiar. I've talked about this with you before. We are a large network with a lot of users, and if you compare this to the private sector, the biggest company in Idaho is just over 12,500 users. So we're right there with the private sector. If you look locally at like Kootenai Medical, they have a lot of users, a lot of campuses similar to us. They also have a lot more staff and are doing maybe a little bit more on some of the programmatic end. But I think that's a good comparison sometimes. It helps you kind of get the scope of what we're doing. And I'm not going to read through all the numbers of devices that we have out there, but a lot of these should hopefully look familiar to you. Many times you are seeing these on consent agenda items, so thank you for your support with those. We've talked a lot about replacement cycles of many of these, and so you can see all these ones that are circled here are ones that we've gotten on replacement cycles over the last few years. The one kind of missing piece that I think we'll need to continue to talk about is some of those security devices. Many of them were added in 2013 via a bond and security levy. A lot of them are starting to age out now, and we need to kind of find a way to sustainably replace those. Yeah, we just went over 10,000 Chromebooks this summer, actually, and I'll talk more about that in a second when we talk about our student-to-device ratio. Yeah. Also on there is 1,000 voice over IP phones. That was another project we're working on this summer. In terms of our technology budget expenses for this coming year, you can see that about 50% of our technology budget goes towards equipment and devices. So roughly 1.4 million is devoted to devices. Staffing is over 900,000, about 35% or so. And then professional development and stipends and licensing and contracts is the other portions of it. So that's kind of just looking at it at a high level, kind of a simplistic view. And then looking at the sources, the revenue streams for that amount, the majority of our technology budget comes from the state. This is one area that the state has really focused some resources in over the last few years. I believe last year I talked to you a little bit about the Idaho Education Technology Association and some of their work. This year we're actually going over $1 million in anticipated revenues for classroom technology. So that's devices meant to be in the hands of students. That's where we're able to afford those 10,000 Chromebooks that we'll have in the district after this year. Just a couple of financial highlights, and hopefully some of these you'll remember. We do have a 400,000 E-rate reimbursement request for this year. That's stayed pretty steady over the last 3 years or so. I mentioned the state classroom technology funding. That's about a $200,000 increase from last year, up over $1 million. You might remember we had a couple of new 5-year contracts that are coming on board this year. One is our copier contract. That's going to save about $425,000 over the life of that 5-year contract. Our new phone contract, again, about $500,000 in savings over 5 years, so that's a great thing. And then, as you might remember, we moved to technology device leasing. So this year, we have a $225,000 lease, and then every year we're going to be adding another kind of 4-year rotation of technology device leases. So. In terms of kind of some of our goals and our vision for technology in our district, you might have heard me say this before, but this really hits all of our big 3 key areas. We're investing in innovative devices to inspire learning in our district to new heights. That's both on the teacher side as well as the student side, so giving teachers the tools that they need to innovate, and then giving our students devices to use to help develop high interest and relevant learning experiences, so individualizing what they're getting. And so this is really a team effort. This is one area where we really work with Dr. Nelson in the curriculum department to have tools like iStation and iReady that are really individualized down to the student level using some of that technology. And then as far as our internet safety plan, another part of our strategic direction is having safe and vibrant learning environments for our students. That includes online as well as offline, and so we have a couple tools in place to help with that. One is our Gaggle filter, which filters student email and Google Drive. And so it's looking for keywords, for content, for images. something pops up and administrators get an alert. This is something that's honestly saved lives in our district, and I think I've talked to you a little bit about that before. You know, we'll get a call in the middle of the night that a student has written something with suicidal thoughts in their Google Drive, and so we'll actually call the police and have them do a welfare check. So it is something that's very beneficial. One change that we're making this summer is on our web content filter to a product called Smoothwall. You approved that a couple months ago. So that allows us to filter web activity in the district, whether it be by user or cloud-based mobile devices. One thing that we've really struggled with over the last couple of years is YouTube and Google. You know, as the technology changes, content filtering is not something that anybody is really excited about or loves when they get a block page, but it's something that we have to have, and that we work hard to make sure that it's blocking what it should and allowing what should be allowed. I've talked a little bit about our customer service goals over the years, so hopefully this is familiar to you, but we have some customer service goals that we've set. Really, our department is a service department, and so we're serving the customers of the school district, which is our staff, our students, everybody that we interact with on a daily basis. And so every year we have a technology survey where we ask our staff, hey, how are we doing with smiling and being kind as we work with you, or providing timely communication, listening responsively and patiently, or focusing on the customer at hand. And so you can see that of the 200 plus staff that took the survey this year in 2018, 96% are saying that we're above average or excellent in all those categories. All these are increases from last year, except for focus on the customer at hand went down 1%. So we'll have to figure out what happened there. This just shows kind of the volume of the work that we're doing. We use a ticketing system, and so when something goes on in a building, if a new staff member needs an account, or if projector's down in a classroom, they submit a tech ticket to us. So you can see this, the number of closed tech tickets by year. This year we went over 8,500, so that's the highest that we've ever had. You can kind of see the growth there. So as more devices come in, we have more things that we need to do. There's more issues that come up. And so you can see we're dealing with a pretty high volume of support tickets. And I think that makes this data in some ways more impressive. This is another question we ask about. How's our support for problems that disrupt instruction? You can see in 2018 we had a little bit of growth in the excellent area. So we've got about 50% of the respondents said that we provided excellent support in this case. Most of that change came from the above average, so about 30% or so, about 80% total said that our service for problems disrupting instruction was above average or excellent. So I think that's good growth. I'd like to see some of that average and below average be the ones that we move up, rather than all the above average moving up to excellent. This is just a couple of projects we have going on this summer. A lot of different stuff going on. I'm not going to read all these to you. Many of them you're familiar with because you see them coming through the consent agenda. Chromebooks, we're bringing in about 2,500 Chromebooks this summer, so my team is really busy right now. We've also got a lot of surplus technology going out, all the bond projects. We're working to meet some of our goals that we set a few years ago, one of those being getting our bandwidth to 10 gigs per second. So you can see that every summer we have a lot going on. This summer is no exception to that, and is probably busier than a lot of the summers we've had in the past. Student to device ratio, this is something we've revisited kind of every year. Last year we reached our goal of having 1 student device per student. This year we're actually below that. This is a little bit misleading because that isn't necessarily like a portable device. Sometimes that might be a computer lab or something like that. So these are all student devices across the district, divided by the number of students that we have. One thing that we'll be working on this year and moving forward is being really efficient with those devices. So We're going to try a couple different things. We're going to try checking devices out to students in the morning, then having them return devices in the afternoon. We're going to experiment with a couple different ways to get devices in the hands of students in the most efficient way possible. As far as instructional technology goes, there's a couple focus areas for this coming school year. One that continues is tools for students to show their thinking using technology. So different apps and things that kids can use on some of those devices to share their thinking with their peers or with their teachers. One app is called Explain Everything. I talked a little bit about that last year. This year we're adding apps. One's called WeVideo. It's really based around video on the Chromebook so that a student could use a webcam, record themselves, do a little bit of quick editing, and then share that with the teacher or staff member. As far as our professional development goes, we're going to be doing some book studies using this book called Learning First, Technology Second, that really aligns with our department vision for technology, that really technology is a tool to help further the learning, not vice versa. So the technology shouldn't come first, it should help with the learning. And then just as a reminder, we have our annual tech kickoff. This is the 4th year that we've done this. It's next week, August 15th at Woodland Middle School. Our instructional coaches like Dan there will be delivering some PD on a variety of topics involving teaching and learning and technology. So lastly, this is the goals that we've shared with you each year for the last few years. Many of these we are now reaching in this 4th year, 2018-19. So obviously that move to one-to-one has been a focus. Getting devices on replacement cycles, increasing our bandwidth. We're pretty much at 10 gigs now, which is well above what we need, but you can never have too much bandwidth in technology. So, and I'll stand for any questions you might have. All right, thanks.
You did a great job.
Since you're giving us a general update, can we just get some feedback on, I know you worked really hard on the cell phone policy last year. Is your staff feeling supported in that, and you're feeling good about the changes that were made?
I think there's definitely more work to do there, because I think we still have a little bit of confusion as I see it. So part of my plan was, as administrators are coming back, to kind of talk through some of what we're doing with that and make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page moving into a new school year.
Is that something we could request maybe an update on in September after you get your staff back together?
Sure.
And if there's ways that we need to support you more? This would definitely be great.
Hey, any other questions for Seth? Excellent job, Seth. Thank you. Okay. J is nutrition services and a lunch debt report. This is on page 172.
So Ed's going to present this one for us as well tonight. Ed's getting a lot of mic time tonight.
Yeah, thank you again for hearing this. Well, what we've got going on is we've got a little situation where we're trying to collect student debt from the families in relationship to that. So what we do is every day we will send email notifications to families that have that and let them know when low balance or negative balances are. We also send the negative balances every day, and we're continuing to do that throughout the summertime. If an email doesn't have an email address in their first Guardian 1, we mailed out them a letter, a notification to be able to do that. And then we also, throughout the school year, every day or during the week, we contact parents via phone calls to be able to do that. So we've been trying to do and work this out to be able to do that. So when we're allowing families to charge, then we need to be able to make sure that we can follow up with them. So what we do also is throughout the summer we've been collecting funds and being able to do that. So far we've collected $10,000 back from families so far, and then we've have $5,000 worth of donations that we've occurred. And then the other thing that we do is after we roll over the school account or the school year for the graduated students, we contact those families and see if they want a refund or if they'd like to donate it to a sibling or donate it to someone in need to be able to do that. So we're trying to, as we were working with Dr. Cook and Seth and Victoria and Scott, we're trying to find other options or other ways that we communicate with families to be able to do that. Some of the things are we're adding the new apps on our phone or on the district so that they can be able to see that. We're also going to be working at trying to look at making robocalls to be able to do that, to notify the families. And then even that we are also looking at the online free and reduced applications. So typically what ends up happening is families that filled out an application last year, they run through the first week in October. So they're covered until that point. And then we send, and then they need to have a new application completed, for the current year. And you can complete a application at any time to be able to do that. So last year, the student charges were $37,000. And then at the end of the year, with donations and everything else that came back, the cost to the district was $1,600, $1,614.24 to be able to do that. Because one of the other crazy rules, or the rules that they have in our program, is that bad debt cannot be funded with federal funds to be able to do that. So it's got to be another source to be able to do that. So this year, right now, our current balance is $59,000. So it almost doubled in relationship to that. So that's where we're working together, and we're trying to do that, and then also have the get counselors and talk to the principals and being able to do that, so we can see how we're can help some of the families to be able to do that, to make sure that they're completing those. So as we go forward, those are going to be some of the options that we're going to be working on and being able to do that. But that's something that I wanted to let you guys know, so you're informed in relationship to that. And again, just like with the charging, we're not saying, well, you're getting an alternative meal or being able to do that, or doing any of the shaming, taking a tray away from a student in regards to some of those type of things. So, okay. Any questions?
The only question I have is just about kind of loading the account. So, if a parent wants to put funds onto those accounts.
Yes.
I think it improved this last year, if I remember it, just for my, my parent hat. But it used to be difficult to do.
Right, and it's only going to get easier with all the new application that you can have. So currently, right now, we'll let parents know that through eFunds, if you use your check routing number, there is no charge to you. If you put on a credit or a debit card, then there is a charge associated with that. And we have gotten down from, with Renee working with Sandy on that, that has been updated really a lot faster and quicker in relationship to those. The other one is that they can put put money on. We go to every back to school event, and we talk to parents and let them know what their balances are, and they can put money on there. They can put money on, using a single check and separate it out for their students. We make calls, and we want to be able to do that. We even have families that use their bank and just send in a check directly to our office. So there's multiple ways of doing that, but that's where we want to be able to do and let the parents know that, it is a debit account from their school meals. And so if we can help them and encourage them to, keep up on those, that would be awesome.
Do you have any idea why the lunch debt doubled? Significant, because that's eventually, if we don't get it resolved, it hits the general fund, doesn't it?
Yep, it does. That's a tricky one to be able to do that, and it's not like when I was looking at the numbers, it's not like it's one school or another school. It's all that they're kind of trickling up more and more. So some of them are doubled, some of them are 1.5, and to be able to do that. So I really don't have a reason why in relationship to that. So, but that's where we're trying to get more information and be able to communicate better with the parents so that they know and they understand that.
It's just not trending the right direction. That's why I'm asking the question.
No, yeah, I definitely want that to be trending the other way, and that's why we want to put in place some of these things. So like, try to make it easier, and so instead of filling a paper application, you can fill one out online. Instead of, if you're getting low balance notices and maybe you, by just too much knowledge every day, that you block it or whatever, to be able to do that. That might happen. So it'd be a way of letting them know, and then, really, that's our ultimate goal is, again, like I always said, is if we can cope and recoup all these type of things, then, because we all, we do a great job serving food and taking care of the kids and working on financial, and that's why I wanted to bring this to you, because this is a hard thing for me, especially with the finance. I like zeros.
I think we just wanted to alert you guys that this is an issue, and that we're doing a lot to try to generate payment of that back debt. It may be that we sit before you again soon and say we might need to change procedure or policy or something, just to and we just wanted to make sure you're aware. It's a substantial increase from previous years, and I think in previous years we've had instances where I think the lemonade stand was a fantastic thing, and I apologize, I don't know the name of the student that did it, but what a fantastic, but I'm not sure that's something we can count on every year, I mean, but $60,000 is a lot of money to hit the general fund with, so.
It's a lot of lemonade, too. Amaya Hill was her name, I believe, right? Amaya Hill, yeah.
Van Hill.
Cute little kid.
Van Hill.
Thank you, Maya Van Hill. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ducar. Okay, elementary course pacing guides.
Dr. Nelson.
Sorry, me again. Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Cook, and members of the board. The work of our district continues, and over the course of the last several weeks, we've been working with our elementary art teachers, and they have been going through and looking at the scope of our content in art. And part of it is that we went from state standards that were totaling about 18 to now state standards that total about 80. The expectations in our state around art are now much higher. And so we've reacted by putting in brand new course pacing guides for you. They're going to be out for 30 public days for anybody to be able to result on. But you can see in there the amount of complexity that we are now bringing in. The different types of methodologies, the different types of media that are being brought in are pretty impressive.
Can I quick comment on that?
Of course.
These are all fantastic. It's too bad that they're not going to increase funding for art, because I know the access is so limited. They get 2 1 day a week, or it's a lot of information to cover for little kids in a short amount of time. So I hope they still get to create art and not.
Absolutely. The focus is still on creation, and you can see that on the front page of every one of them. But we do want to make sure that students understand the connections to the world. And I cannot stand up here and tell you how lucky we are as a district that we do even provide what we do provide, because our state provides zero funding for that to be able to do that. This is an option for us to be able to have fine quality arts, music, PE, all of that every single day in all of our elementaries.
What was the logic behind going from 18 standards to 80 standards? ridiculous as far
The
as
standards were extraordinarily broad. Students will be able to paint. And now they went into the different types of painting, and they're actually trying to make more connections to historical art and art history. So now when they do a project, instead of just painting, they're maybe looking at Starry Night by Van Gogh and looking at that particular type of painting. So looking at different styles and all the way throughout. It's pretty impressive. But I'll tell you, our teachers are a little concerned too, because it is an exploratory, as Trustee May said, and the expectations are higher.
Okay, so that's out for the next 30 days. We'll see it
Yep,
back here.
we'll see you back next
September
month.
10th. Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Cook, item L looks like you.
Seatbelts on school buses. Hopefully you all got an opportunity to see. We had a bus out available, one of our newer buses that had the seatbelts installed. This is from my perspective, going to be a fascinating conversation because it's such a new area. And so one of the things that I've asked is for Jill to be available and for Megan to be available to kind of have a dialogue. We're not totally prepared to do a full presentation. What we are ready to do is to start this conversation. We've had Scott went to recruited some students, went to one of our schools and got several students and built a video, kind of an introductory video for showing students what a school bus with seatbelts looks like and what that is experience would be like. And I think what I'd like for us to do for 10 or so minutes tonight, maybe to whatever your guys' liking would be, is to kind of talk about this is a little bit uncharted territory, and how do we want to go forward with this, with the expectation. We have 6 of these buses now, and the expectation, I think, just common sense would be we would expect people to use the seatbelts. We have them, and we would want that to happen. And so what does that look like in policy? What's that look like in practice? And therefore, what would our next steps be? And I think we want to do that with Megan's support and advice, with Jill's implementation, and maybe some kind of a training recommendations, and go from there. I think one thing I would say as a preface before we go into this, and Scott is going to lead into this video and kind of how that was developed, is I think it's arguable that we can do it with existing policies already in place and just talk about how we would integrate the use of the seatbelts into those policies. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Scott and have him introduce this video, and then remind you that Jill's here for technical questions and Megan's here for legal questions, and I'm here for questions about a good place to get some dinner afterwards.
Sorry, we'll start over. Good evening, I'm Scott. Thank you. We've been flummoxed tonight with some technical difficulties, but we're getting there. So anyway, a few weeks ago we went over to Winton Elementary School with one of our brand new buses. Jill and Ken Black, driver for the district, joined us, and 4 young volunteers that Victoria Michael found from our school district. I believe they were both they were elementary and middle school aged, and we wanted to show how 2 students as well as 3 students could sit in these seats and buckle up. And we just very simply, this is a short video, but we simply just wanted to show, introduce what these buses look like, how they work with the seat belts. We will be rolling this out. It's already on our YouTube channel, and we'll be promoting it here shortly through Facebook and other channels, and parking it on our district website. So over the course of the next few weeks, especially those families at the schools where these buses will be serving, they can get a better idea of how their children will be using these seat belts. So with that, let me get this rolling.
Coeur d'Alene Public Schools has 6 new buses ready to roll with some new features I'd like to show you now. Hi, I'm Ken Black. I drive a school bus for the school district's transportation department. All 6 of our new buses are equipped with seat belts to enhance student safety. These 3-point lap and shoulder belts are easy to buckle and unbuckle, just like those in your car. They provide an extra level of protection in any type of collision. The new buses will hit the road this fall on routes with higher speeds and longer distances. As we replace older buses in our fleet, we'll increase the number of buses with seat belts. Our buses are built with student safety in mind, including high-backed, closely spaced, well-padded seats designed to contain students during sudden stops. Now they're even safer. Just recently, the National Transportation Safety Board recommended lap and shoulder safety restraints on all new school buses. You can help keep our young bus riders safe. Please remember to stop and wait whenever you see a bus loading or unloading students. Thanks, and have a great school year.
When we were done filming that, we sort of improvised a few safety messages using the students that will create some PSAs here in the next few weeks to just kind of reinforce that students are walking, biking, back to school again, waiting at bus stops. And so the kids were great. So before we took them out for treats that day as a reward for helping us, they helped us film a couple more PSA spots. That was it.
So first of all, just what questions do you guys have with, I think this is kind of a good starting spot for introducing the community to the fact that 6 of our 60 buses are going to have seat belts, and that we would like to push forth this attitude, I think, and that's the right, it's a little tricky because 6 of 60, right, 10% of our buses have seat belts, and so the attitude should be ubiquitous that if you're on a bus with a seatbelt, that you wear the seatbelt. And so I think our first step here now would be, what questions do you have for next steps on how we would communicate this, and what it is that you would like to see with regards to this, and what questions might you have from our legal team to talk about rollout and moving forward.
I have a couple comments. This is something that was kind of, as you know, I pushed pretty hard a couple years ago to get this rolling. The concerns I think we had, and Jill and I have talked about this, we had some meetings with the bus drivers. The concern was their liability issue, right? What happens if kids don't put on the seatbelt, or if they're driving down the road and the kid takes the seatbelt off, there's an accident. I think you also saw on the Facebook page, Scott, there were some comments about potentially increased liability. I forget exactly for if your kids are not in a belted bus. Is that correct? What it was? But I guess what I'm interested, and this is really a legal question, is I want to make sure the bus drivers are protected, and that's stated loud and clear. Otherwise, we're going to lose more bus drivers than we already have, and that that they're just protected. And it seems to me that if our policy is, well, maybe you could address that first. I have some other questions, but what is their protection if a kid is not wearing a seatbelt and they're supposed to?
Thank you, Trustee Hearn. So the district has liability coverage in place that covers employees. So as long as an employee is acting within the course and scope of their duty, and there is an accident or occurrence that happens, and sometimes those individuals, whether they be a teacher or a bus driver in this case, sometimes they are personally named on that lawsuit, but they will be covered by the district's insurance policy. So if the bus driver is driving the bus, they're doing their job, and an accident is to occur, and there's a lawsuit or something that results from that, it would be tendered to the insurance company, and there wouldn't be personal liability to those bus drivers. It would be part of the district's insurance policies.
Okay. All right. As far as if do you see any potential issues about, since we have some belted buses, if there's accidents on unbelted buses, you know, that was one of the questions, wasn't it, Scott? Can you speak to that? I may be not saying that correctly, but I think that's what concern some people had.
The comments that I saw on our initial Facebook post seemed to center around the question of use on the buses with belts,
Okay.
and if there was a need for an evacuation, is it perhaps complicated or slowed down at all by the fact that students need to take a moment to unbuckle before they evacuate? But there were also similar comments made about how an orderly evacuation could be improved or helped by the fact that students presumably are uninjured after an accident and therefore can evacuate more quickly. So we were seeing comments expressed on both sides.
Okay. So it seems to me, isn't the question then, you know, if we have belted buses and we tell the bus driver in policy or procedure, however we do this, that, you know, when your students get on the bus, you're to tell the students to buckle up, right? And if they do buckle up, they're, like I said earlier, if they unbuckled, as long as the driver is doing his job by telling the student what they're supposed to be doing, right? Then it seems to me they're protected, I would think, even if they later unbuckle. Is that correct? I mean, because the driver did what he or she was supposed to do. Tell them when you're supposed to follow a policy, and you're not. You know, if a kid doesn't follow it, that was one of the worries. I'm just echoing comments we heard in the bus barn, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, Jill, where the bus drivers were really upset about, oh my God, what's going to happen if they take their seatbelt off and they get injured? So I just want to cover that base real clearly.
Yeah, I think that the personal liability for a bus driver here is virtually non-existent. If they are driving their bus and doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're not on some frolic, they're covered by the district's insurance policy. And this happens every time the district gets sued, and there are often times where individual teachers or individuals of the district are named personally in lawsuits, and that gets covered by the district's insurance policy. So I think that concern we can address. My recommendation, and the biggest initial question that I see the board having to answer at this point is what you've already been addressing, is whether it's going to be mandatory, and that I think all the other decisions kind of trickle down from there, but that seems to be kind of the initial question that from a decision tree, then we could address the liability and risk that may result from that.
On those lines, I had a legal question about equity. You know, we talk about equity in our state constitution. Is there an equity issue with only having 10% of our fleet having seatbelts? So we have a parent that really is passionate about seatbelts and they want their child on a belted bus. From a district perspective, are we then compelled to provide that for them?
It's certainly an awkward position. We are where we are. I mean, we have the funding. There's only 6 buses. And I think the district has to make the best strategic choices in terms of what routes are most suitable for those seat-belted buses.
Yeah, do you see the position a parent could take, though, is that we are providing something? And so from my perspective, I was thinking, if we encounter that, yeah, what will be our stance? We're placing these buses on the routes that we feel they're the most useful, but I can see it still being an issue. And maybe you have an answer.
I think those are great questions. I think the board needs to give the direction on which routes, and I think that they already have given that direction, is that the routes that are most suitable for these buses right now are the highest speed and the longest routes. And that just is going to be the direction that the board takes. And if there's no
if there's no injury, they don't really have any damages at this point. I mean, those could be complaints, and those are going to be hard questions, and until the fleet changes, we just are where we are.
I also wonder if one indicator that we haven't considered is age of the rider. If there's any data out there, and we can probably look into that, if a younger student or child is better suited for a seatbelt versus a 17, older. And I think that's something that we can maybe look into. But then again, bus routes don't often go by your size or student age, so just
Well,
another area.
I'd like to add to that too, and I think this is something to think about going forward. When you have 6 of 60, it's one discussion. When you have 48 of 60, and now you've got 12 buses that don't have seatbelts, which routes do those go to? I think this is something that we want to be mindful of, that this isn't a one-time problem. This is an ongoing issue that we're going to have to address until we have the plan built out for what that expectation
How many
might
years
look
is
like.
that? Do we know, or is that a difficult? I'm just curious, ballpark in my mind. How many years till we have 100%?
10 years
10
if we
years.
keep
10
mine
years.
6 a year. Then we don't grow.
So every year.
Well, if the question is, are they mandated or not, it doesn't make sense to me for us to have buses with seatbelts and the bus driver gets on and says, hey, we got buses, we got belts here, but you can wear them if you don't want to. I mean, if you don't want to wear them, that's okay with us. I think we say the policy is you wear them. And then, like, again, if they choose not to wear them, that's, at least they've said what the policy is. But I think there it needs to be a mandate. It's not, kids, hey, you don't even wear 'em if you want them. You don't have to wear 'em if you don't want to. Blah blah blah. I don't think that doesn't seem right to me. It seems to me that that they get the expectation up front, first day of school. This is the expectation. I don't know. That's my opinion. It doesn't make sense to us to have buses where we're not requiring kids to wear the belts that we spent $7,000 extra per bus to provide.
If it's the board's wish and we want to add to policy that buses that have belts it will be mandated that students on buses that have belts installed wear those, that's perfectly acceptable with us.
So I think we need to have that discussion. I think they're kind of looking for some direction, right? School's going to be in session before we're together again as a board. And I think that's what you're asking for, right?
Yeah, I think even what we could do, if you guys can just, I don't know that we need a motion, but the general consensus that you'd like to see a policy that embeds that language into a policy that says, or procedures that gives staff their marching orders and lets us know what our expectations are, and then we could then take this next level, notch up our video into a full-on training video of what it looks like when you get on a bus and how to use the seatbelt, not just as this is an informational kind of toe in the water, but the next step would be, this is a training video on how you ride a bus that's got a seatbelt.
So I'll weigh in if no one's ready. To me, I think to start with policy, it's going to be, I think we're going to miss the mark because I don't think we know what the policy needs to be, or how are we going to do this. And I think at least in the short term, it should be advised that you wear a seatbelt as we figure out what are these kinks when we start getting 70, 80 kids on a bus. What's that look like? How are we going to manage this? How are we going to follow it? And then see how that goes. It would be what I would suggest, that we kind of have a soft rollout and maybe we work towards mandatory. But I think if you say mandatory day one, I think we're going to struggle with that. It would be my personal opinion on it. I think a big part of this is just going to be education and habit. And my guess would be elementary schools are going to be, or elementary students are going to be very complacent with this. Middle school is going to be tough just because all the social things go in there, and high school is probably going to almost be non-existent, I would guess. And those are very broad assumptions, but based on my experience in my own household, it's just a habit.
I wouldn't disagree with you at all on that. So let's just let me entertain me on this for 1 second. But what if we said, let's just forget about seatbelts for a second and say we're talking about sitting down in your chair when you're on the bus, sitting down in your seat. And so there is an expectation that kids sit down. And when kids don't sit down, the bus driver addresses it. And if after so many times of not sitting down, the kid gets a reprimand or some kind of discipline procedure, which could lead up to, if it's habitual or long enough, that they lose their bus riding privileges. And so I think the conversation is, if we didn't mandate, for example, is what does that look like? What does a soft rollout look like? Where do we, procedurally, a mandate doesn't make more sense to me because I agree with it. It makes more sense to me because I know what we need to do. A soft rollout is is it up to interpretation? So I'm fine with that conversation, but I'd like us to have that dialogue, whatever that looks like, so that we know what it is that you guys want from us with regards to next steps.
I guess I'm asking also what you mean by soft rollout. And Jill, maybe you could tell us what would work. Let's look at practical things. What's going to work here? What's going to go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Let's hear from Tamara and Lisa on this, if they have opinions on it.
All right. I'm not trying to cut out these trustees. I was just. Go ahead. Do you have any comments?
I think my comment first would be, if we roll out a mandatory bus policy, that we ensure we're providing it to the right students. So I would like some more information on who should we provide this to, and I think that then would give making the opportunity, if a parent is frustrated that their child doesn't have access to a bus with seatbelts and it's a mandatory policy that we're implementing, we have research and data to say we're providing it on these routes and these students where it's proven to be the most beneficial. I don't think we have that information yet, so I'm a little bit concerned that we have a hard and fast policy without being able to respond to a parent that's concerned. I think every parent's going to want, not every parent, most parents are going to want their student to ride a bus with seatbelts, K through 5. I would like to see that data. I kind of agree with Casey that I think it will be difficult in a month to roll this out, but I'm willing to give it a shot, but I have concerns that we will be backtracking quickly and it'll be difficult.
I would echo what you just said, and we sat in those, and it's my hope that most everyone gets in their car, kids, and they buckle their seatbelt, and it was just instinct when you got in the bus and you saw the seatbelt that I sat in the seat and I buckled it. But you also might get parents on the reverse to say, I don't want my kid buckled in a seatbelt. We didn't get buckled in a seatbelt. We still have buses that don't have seatbelts, so it could be, I'm not sure.
I think it's important to remember, first of all, that school buses are already the safest vehicle on the road. Yeah. The compartmentalization, and you guys have probably heard the comparison, but it's like an egg inside of the egg crate. That's the way the seats are designed. They're tall, they're padded, so kids are already extremely safe on the school buses. Adding the seatbelts, is that an extra layer of protection? Absolutely, in the side impacts and rollovers. What I would like to see, from my opinion, is I would love to take a couple years. I would love to really focus our attention on our elementary students. I don't think they're going to have any problem buckling up. I think after we get about a third of our buses online, I think then we could maybe start saying, all right, guys, it's time to buckle up. I don't want to have to go take kids to the office and write them up and have them lose their bus riding privileges because it's already the safest mode of transportation. And so to kick a kid off for not wearing their seatbelt of an already safe bus, it's just, I think we need to have a little wiggle room in the beginning, and it's just my opinion. And I understand, we're going to have parents say, well, you got the seatbelts, you spent the money on them, why don't you enforce it? But that's kind of the way I'm thinking. We can go either way. We really can.
Ms. O'Dowd, what is your legal opinion? based on kind of those two options, if we're mandating or recommending.
I think that there are risks both ways. It's the district. So I think I think the board has heard all of this before, and when it got to this decision and made it, a lot of states will have, not a lot, some states have mandated by statute that all buses in certain states have these safety features. Some states don't have that statute, but have created indemnity provisions to help protect the districts that go above and beyond and try to seatbelt kids. I think that is a great thing for this district and others in the state to push for. It does not exist yet, but it would be sure great if it did. So we don't have those protections. I think that's the first thing to realize. And we are going above and beyond with something that isn't required by statute. So then the question is what duties has the district assumed, and what reasonable measures are we taking to assume that we're doing the best, not the best, doing what a reasonable person in these circumstances would do. So generally speaking, I mean, I think that there's a practical impact with how do you get a bus driver to ensure that every kiddo is properly buckled? What does that look like? Do you have to have an aide on every bus? Does it add 40 minutes to a bus route to ensure that every kiddo is properly buckled at every stop? I don't think that that's a practical thing, but these are just considerations that the board should be thinking about in terms of whether they want to go hard policy at the outset, which the flip side of that is I do think that having mandatory requirements from an outside perspective sure looks reasonable, and that's what Trustee Hearn was already saying. We have these seat belts, why the heck wouldn't we require it and make it mandatory? But this is one of those times where we have to balance risk versus what is practical, and I think you need to hear what Jill is saying and have her be able to tell you whether it's practical that they can. And one other thing is if you did make it mandatory, I don't think it has to be in policy right now. Jill, the transportation department, we already have rules and guidelines. I mean, Jill sent me a pack of them about what bus rules that already exist. Something about seatbelts could easily be added to that. And we already have policies that say disciplinary action can result in loss of bus privileges. That's already there. So if the board gave direction and said, we want to make this mandatory, adjust your internal rules to make that happen, you can do that without creating a board policy. And frankly, that makes more sense to me because it's a little premature. You've only got 6 of the buses with this, so it's an awkward position to be trying to draft a policy when you just don't have it all together yet.
I would agree that maybe I appreciate your comments, Megan. I would agree that we don't maybe need to do it in policy. And what I mean by mandatory, I'm not talking about kicking kids off buses. I'm not talking about that kind of thing. I'm talking about the bus driver tells the kids, we expect you to wear your seatbelts. And this is how you put them on. And that's it. That's what I mean by mandatory. That doesn't mean he or she's going to be driving along the highway and jams the brakes on it because 5 kids took their seatbelts off. You know, I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. But I think that if we begin to we begin over time to build the expectation that you're going to, if you're in a seat belt, or in a bus with belts, you're going to wear them. But that doesn't mean I would have a real problem if I'm hearing that all these kids are being kicked off the bus because they're not wearing them. I think over time this will work itself out. I mean, I think kids will see that over time. But I think we should start off with the expectation these do provide additional safety for those particular kinds of accidents. That was the whole reason for doing this, for the rollover and side impact accidents. Why would we not use them? Why would we not tell the kids you're supposed to use them, and parents, would you tell your kid to use them? But I don't. But I mean, if you mean soft rollout, meaning we're not going to be hard nosed on kids, I would agree with that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing, just differently. To me, I think I agree. The expectation is that you wear them. But if they don't, that's their choice. I think at this point is what I'm saying. I don't think we start writing you up, or that the bus driver has to stop every mile and check seatbelts, or even to start
absolutely
the route. I think So I don't know if it's an announcement. Hey, we're pulling out of the parking lot. Make sure you got your seatbelt buckled. Even if that's required, but
I think procedurally, I think I understand what our role is. I think it's going to be important for us to add something in our bus rules of that seatbelts, if seatbelts are available, the expectation exists that they are to be used appropriately, and that we do some sort of formalized training for kids that would be on those buses. Video kind of thing, I think, is a very easy thing. And then thirdly, what the expectation for bus drivers looks like, so of those that are driving the buses. And I think that would meet the needs of kind of what everybody's saying. And then maybe we talk about this again in 6 months and just see how things are going.
I would agree. Sounds great.
I do think the PSA targeted towards those K through 5 kids, like Chair Morris was saying, if mom's telling Johnny, buckle your seatbelt when you get on the bus, it's going to be a lot easier, especially if the parents are aware that some of our buses will have seatbelts.
Well, most parents want them. Most parents want them.
Right. Lynn and I were talking about this a week or so ago, and I think familiarity is just going to be key. So the more people that see those videos and that have awareness that we have seatbelts on buses, those parents are going to be saying, did you wear your seatbelt, or I expect you to wear your seatbelt. One way, just as we were talking, that came up of maybe being able to do that is that those couple of schools, whether that's Fernan and Winton and Hayden Meadows or whatever, that are covering those routes, that maybe a back to school night when everyone shows up to get their kids' schedule, having a bus there and having a sign on it or something, or one of the drivers that all the kids loves and saying, hey, come check out the new buses with seatbelts, and just getting people into those buses to see. And you're pre-training them before the buses even, before they're on the buses, or the video. I mean, once they know it, they're going to use them, I think.
They are. I was thinking just one more comment. I know I've been talking a lot about this, but this is something I pushed hard, mostly because I saw the news things about injured and dead kids from rollover type accidents, and did a little research on this. But I can remember when this thing first came out, we had KHQ picked up this whole story and did a story on this, and then there were over 2,000 comments to that story. I remember reading a lot of them. I didn't read all 2,000, but almost all of them were supportive to it. It was no offense, but it was the bus drivers, and some of those folks were opposed to it. But almost all of them were parents saying, "Why don't we? We have seatbelts in cars and airplanes and carnival rides. Why wouldn't we have them in school buses?" So I think that it's going to be a thing that's going to take time. It's going to take time, but I think if we do it as the chairman said here, in a positive way, hey, we got these new buses. We'd like to see how they work here, and I don't think we're going to have the problems that we think we might have on this.
I think it's going to be a positive thing. Honestly, I really do. I think it's new and shiny, and I think kids are going to find that it's new and shiny. But just like anything else, when you get in your car every day, same with on the school buses, I think it's just going to be a natural thing. Some of the older kids might not think it's so cool or whatever, so I expect some resistance. All of our shuttle kids and transfer kids, this bus has them, this bus don't. Again, it's just new and shiny, but I really would like to just take the next year or two, let's see how this goes, let's learn from it, and I think it's going to end up being positive.
All right.
Okay.
I think our marching orders are clear. We'll go execute, and we'll come back in 6 months and have an update.
I want to say one more thing. ISBA, Iowa School Board Association, they were interested in this issue, and it was something we presented at the convention last year. And I've talked to some of those people, and they would like us at some point to update them on how it's going. I mean, I'd love for us, maybe not in this November because it's too early, but a year from now or something, be able to present at an ISBA conference. This is the good things, and these were the problems we had. Because they were very interested. I talked to lots of trustees who were very interested in this whole issue. And Coeur d'Alene is leading the way in the state, and in fact in the whole region. There's no Spokane schools also. So they're interested as to how we work the bugs out in terms of our policy and procedures.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Is there nothing further? Then let's move on. We went from like 45 minutes ahead of schedule to almost right on. So we've been chatty on some of these topics. So next up is just an update on the all-day kindergarten pilot program. You see Dr. Roscoe standing up
please.
there.
Yeah.
Made her sit here for 3 hours to do this.
All day K in 30 seconds. The update is that both of our classrooms, the classroom at Sorensen and the classroom at Meadows, the classes are filled with the 18 families who are able to pay the $275 a month tuition. We're still working right now on getting that to be a direct deposit. Katie and her team are working on that. So that first month, I believe families will have to maybe come in with a check, but after that, it'll be an automatic. Both schools are saving spots for, so there are 5 seats in both of those classrooms for families who would not have to pay. And at both schools, both Lisa and Brett are saving those spots until we do those initial screeners when our kindergartners come to us to see some of our little ones who would really benefit from having that full day program. This summer, June, I believe it was, a few days after the school year ended for our teachers, we had an all-day kindergarten professional development session, which is common for our all-day kindergarten schools already, the 4 southern schools who have all-day kindergarten. That professional development focus is common for them, but our all-day kindergarten teachers joined that professional development, as did a number of other kindergarten teachers, and talked a lot about what are the routines that need to be in place for good teaching and learning. And they, what I noticed, and they actually just to make you aware, many of our all-day kindergarten teachers had a chance to visit this last year. 2 kindergarten teachers in Welpinit who have done some exceptional work with literacy. And those teachers joined our June Professional Development Day. That our teachers had such great things to say about that day together. So we started to collect some information from all of our kindergarten teachers, including those new all-day K teachers, to see if they'd be interested in several sessions throughout the year where they can come together and really talk specifically about literacy, community, and trauma-informed classrooms. And we got a lot of feedback already that says they'd like that time. So that's my summary.
On those 18 seats, it's kind of lottery system, right? If there's more than, if we have 30 people, let's say, that are interested, they're lottering those, or was it first come, first serve?
I know that we spoke to that in that initial document. I remember that, and I think
what we chose.
Yeah, I think we said we would create a waiting list for those other seats. I think that we. It was I know that Lisa was a little bit nervous at first about whether she'd fill those, and I think you said a lot of notices went out to families. So I think those both schools, I think they were instructed to place those families in the classrooms as they came, because it was going to mean that families had to be able to know that information to be able to make arrangements for daycare and that sort of thing. So I don't believe it was, we're going to collect all these names and then we're going to have a lottery. I believe it was, as families come to the schools, they'd be placed in the classroom and then a waiting list would be created.
Thank you.
Along those lines, I think kindergarten screening happened after we maybe made this decision. So were we able to make sure that we contacted every family that's entering kindergarten and to give them the opportunity to participate in this all-day program?
Many of our schools have not done kindergarten screenings yet. Yeah. So
I just want to make sure that everybody got a shot at it, and that we're not going to, come September, our parents go, "Oh, I didn't even know you had all-day K."
Yeah, no, I think that will happen, actually, Lisa, because I think, there was the big push and all of the discussions we had at the board level. Both principals were instructed to go out and get the word out immediately. We talked a lot about families feeling a great sense of urgency because they were having to make daycare decisions. And we said, let those families know as they come in. So I believe that there will be some families who say, I didn't get a shot at this. And
Maybe because they weren't in the know, do you think? Or we could have
well,
done better about contacting
we had some conversation about how do you get that word out, and we as part of that team we explored all the different ways to make sure families knew, and it was my impression that at both schools they worked their socks off to make sure every way they could that families would know. Part of the difficulty is that there's some families who aren't yet registered because their babies haven't come to our schools yet, and so figuring out how to reach those families is a struggle. My guess would be in the future, if depending on what we notice and depending on space and all those other things we talked about, my guess is that it will become well known, as it is with the other 4 southern schools, that there's an all-day K program there.
Have we ensured that we're contacting these parents this summer that have signed up? Heard a little bit maybe that they haven't been contacted and they're curious about, are we a go, is it happening? So if we can just ensure that we're following up, we're collecting a deposit, or we're securing those spots, and so families that need to make daycare decisions, they can rest assured that all-day kindergarten is happening, we're moving forward.
I'll pass that information along. You bet. Be happy to.
Actually, one last request, and maybe this is for Katie next time. Once we get our numbers secured and we get the 5 spots figured out, it would be nice, this is for next time, not for this time. It'd be nice to see the actual dollar amount. You know, I know we made this really quick decision and was kind of unsure how much this program will cost the district. But once we have that, can you guys share it with us?
Absolutely, and I think we had estimated about 15,000. But yeah, absolutely, because maybe it won't be that much.
October-ish.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Orozco. All right, last info item, number N. We almost made it through the full alphabet today. As a policy for information, this is 3440, student fees, and Katie has a change there.
We've been keeping a close eye on this policy, the fee policy. We made some changes to it last fall, I believe. And one thing I noticed with this policy is we would need to make an amendment to allow for tuition fee collection for our optional all-day kindergarten programs. The policy was pretty clear that no funds should be collected for anything relating to the instructional day, which isn't the case with our tuition-based all-day K program. We are collecting funds for activities occurring during the instructional day. And then I did make one change. I noticed there was something in the policy that we currently do not do because we don't have fee schedules anymore. We don't collect classroom fees, so there wouldn't be a report to the Board of Trustees for an annual report to the Board of Trustees for fee schedules. So I just removed that and cleaned up that language there.
Okay, any questions on this one?
I just had general concern about combining all-day K in this policy. I almost feel like this should be a standalone policy, and I don't. I think because our state constitution is so clear about how we fund public education, so I felt a little uncomfortable winding this into this policy when if it's something that we go on with down the road, I think we are going to have to be very clear on how we're charging a fee, how we're justifying it, and we're commingling some ideas in this policy. It felt like to me that.
So I agree with that, and I thought about changing the language of this policy and then creating another policy. However, I look to this policy as a very clear guideline for our principals and our office managers to point to them. No fees shall be collected for anything relating to the instructional day, because there's been a lot of confusion as we've made the change. For example, can we charge for a swim program? Can we charge for the transportation to go to this field trip? And it should be clear to them that nothing that occurs during the instructional day should have a fee attached. It can have a donation, but not a fee. And so I felt like if we changed some of that language, that was really clear and said you can't charge the fee, I felt like it would become kind of confusing for the schools. So I felt like keeping the clear, no fees shall be collected language, but then putting in the optional that would allow the tuition to be collected. And I don't know if you have ideas on how we can keep that super clear language, as there's no reason that you should be collecting for anything in the instructional day except for all day K.
If I can weigh in, I think this is one of those, since it is a pilot program, that if it's successful and we decide to expand it or continue it, that I agree. I think we're going to need a policy, but I think this may cover our bases for now, and at least gives the authority to staff in policy to collect the fee for the optional all-day kindergarten program. And then there's going to be more work to do as we move forward.
I think the reason I think it's confusing, and maybe Megan can weigh in a little bit, is that the reason that we can charge a fee for all-day kindergarten is because it's not required in Idaho.
Oh, gotcha.
And so I think for some parents that's going to be very confusing because they view it as a mandatory, even though our state doesn't mandate that we provide it. Pretty much everybody in Coeur d'Alene or this area goes to kindergarten, and so I just wanted to make sure they didn't think we were overstepping our bounds. And I'm fine with it for this year if it's a pilot, and next year if we continue it, then we can really do some hard work on.
My hope was that adding the word for optional full-day kindergarten program was what cleared up that confusion. Is the parents are opting into the full-day paid program. They do have an option for a free half-day program at their schools. So if they choose to opt in to the paid program, then that's what gives us the authority to charge.
Okay. Well, this is out for information. We'll see it back next month for action. So we can think about it. We can tweak it then if we need to, and we can see if we get any comments on it. Okay.
The only thing, if I may, real quick, the only thing I was going to add is in regards to Trustee May's comments is I think everybody knows we've got the class action lawsuit in the state of Idaho where every district has been named, and I think that will give us some more guidance to over the next year when that case gets settled out, and I like to be hopeful. I like to be hopeful. And I think after that case is resolved, we'll have better guidance on how, in the long term, we should address this policy.
Do you know what our southern neighbors are doing? Because they are providing an all-day K for, I wonder what their policy looks like and where they're including it.
That's a great question. I don't know that off the top of my head, but we could reach out. I don't know if they have. I don't know. We could.
Okay. Just a couple reminders here for upcoming meetings. We've got something going on tomorrow night, I think. I can't remember. No, we'll be back here in this room at 5 o'clock with our audience. And we'll be doing our appointment for Zone 4. So that's 5 o'clock in this meeting, in this room, open to the public. We, a few months ago, put a workshop for August 20th on the calendar as kind of a save the date type thing. Trustee May is going to be out of town that week.
I will be out of town as well.
Trustee Pickford will be out of town.
Taking our daughter to college.
Oh, yeah. I think what we were talking about was some sort of board retreat. So do we want to look at the next week? Do you need to check your schedule? That's the first week that we have staff back in buildings and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the 27th is the district kickoff. I'm not sure that would be the best day.
It couldn't be that day, but do you want to look at your calendar for a different time that week? Maybe that would work. Okay. So we'll be in touch on that. District kickoff, as Dr. Cook just mentioned, is on that Monday, the 27th, and that's the traditional event at Lake City High School. Yes, I believe so. There may be the Friday before. September 10th is our regular board meeting. I'm going to be away at a business conference that week, so I will not be at that September 10th meeting. So, Tom, you'll be running the show. And then September 24th, this is something we put together a few months ago as well, which is our workshop was going to focus on just kind of mental health initiatives and things that we've been working on or working towards there. Okay.
Just one point of clarification. We kicked the can down the road for 60 days on the Hayden Lakes. That September board meeting would be 65-ish, 70 days. What's our obligation?
Lynn may recall the motion, but I was just gonna make a recommendation if the board could wait until after September 11th when that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is. I think we would have a lot of good information for the board to consider with actually evaluating the locations by that point.
I wonder if we should notice that and then maybe
Yeah, I think let's
have a conversation.
Yeah, we're not noticed for
Yeah.
for the night, so let's.
I do have the motion in front of me, which was to table the adoption of the MOU for 60 days. That was done on July 2nd.
So that's.
Would there be any
Well-
legal ramifications if we didn't take action in 60 days based on that motion? It just
No.
seems like we should be able to push that date to take action when it's appropriate for the board to take action.
Obligated. I made the motion. The idea was to push it off a ways until we can figure this out.
Yeah, why don't we take some time, we can figure that out, and we have, between now and then, we're gonna be together probably at some point, or we can have a meeting, and then we can, even next week, we're together for a student hearing, so, I mean, we could just put that on there that we're gonna extend the table 15 days for
Yeah, my
continued
recommendation
due
would be
diligence or whatever.
to amend it and push it out and maybe even get it on the calendar with a date that the board is able to meet after that September 11 date. Yeah, special board meeting probably.
It might be a good special board meeting, especially, I'm sure Brian would like us to have that decision as soon as possible so the architects can continue doing their work. Okay. Yeah. August 14th, we have a student hearing, and then we're gonna add that to it. To make a decision on when we're gonna make a decision about that.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, if there's nothing further, let's adjourn.